We're back in the New York groove. We're back in the New York groove. Ladies and gentlemen, we are definitely back here in New York because we have a lot to talk about here. We're getting ready for that trade deadline, but we're going to give you the Mets perspective. We're going to give you the Yankees perspective. I'm going to make sure I'm going to be the referee. For our wrestling fans, I'm going to be the Shawn Michaels when he was the referee. We got some Met fans here. We got a Yankee fan here. Even though I'm a Mets fan, I'm going to call it right down the middle for everybody here because we have a lot to get into here. Mets, Yankees, you name it, and much, much more with three of my guys right now on Sportswire Radio. That includes Chris Pizzea of the Liftoff Jets, which you heard earlier this afternoon here on Sportswire Radio. Also, the Talking Rivals. Also, Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter, which I fully listened to not once but twice on Sportswire Radio. Enjoyed that. Good time, pal. From that, and the man that I saw last week, I'm sure we'll get into that here shortly. That is the brute force Brad Weiss, who, in case you didn't know, ladies and gentlemen, he's from Long Island because he's wearing a Long Island shirt. So Long Island basketball, we've got Long Island represented right now. We've got New Jersey, we've got me, Brooklyn, and Staten Island, and I'm sure we'll have much, much more here. So without further ado here on the Sports Report, the number one level sports show here, the Sports Report. And guys, how you doing? And we're also joined in the middle of that Billy McInerney, who I haven't seen you. I forgot what you look like here, Billy McInerney. It's been a long time since I saw you. And how you doing there?
Doing all right. You know, been busy, but it feels good to be back.
I'm happy to have you for sure, and certainly a lot of talk here, Mets, Yankees, and I know for the Met fans, it's good times, and I want to give a shout out to Anthony J. Finkel, who I saw yesterday, and who I will see once again, and yes, the crew is back together, Friday night sports night, and certainly we'll get a lot into that, but I'll come to the brute force in a second because we'll recap the WNBA experience that we had. Certainly want to make sure I give a note for that. But let me get to the Yankees here first because I got a lot of Met fans. But like I said, I promised I want to be right down the middle here. I want to be like Shawn Michaels. I want to make sure that there's no shenanigans, no ganging up on anybody. So let me get to Chris because I saw his comments on social media. So, I mean, Yankees get Andrew Benintendi. You like the move, and what's your thoughts on where the Yankees are going forward here with the trade deadline?
Yeah, that was a good start. Good first trade. I think we got a couple more coming as well. Hopefully Gallo will be out. At least that'll be one negative batter in the lineup. But
oh my God, what was Aaron Boone doing? Now I'm going to be down in the middle, but what the heck was he doing on Tuesday?
I don't think anybody really understood what he was doing. He tried to defend it by what was it, the first game he was trying to force.
He wanted Diaz to come in earlier. That was post game comments. Yep.
To be honest, I mean, it was a little bit off. The idea wasn't exactly the best one, but it actually almost worked out because Diaz got into problems in the.
He did. No, he did. No question. I agree.
They just couldn't come up with the big hit, and that's really been the story for the Yankees. When they lose, and this is going back 5-6 years, they can't get the big hit with runners in scoring position. So that's definitely our Achilles heel for the last 5-6 years.
But I feel like that's every team, though, in baseball, because I've been on the air for almost 4 years, and Brad's been here, and Billy's been here a while. I would always talk about the Mets. And, the Mets can't hit. I feel like every team that doesn't win, it's always that issue. That's always the Achilles heel.
Well, I don't think so. Well, I'm sure, yeah. But with the Yankees, they got a really good bullpen, and their starting rotation is good enough, I think.
I agree. I agree with you on that.
They obviously got the power numbers. It's when they have to get that base hit. They don't have to hit the home run. Just hit a big hit when they need it, and it just never happens. And you go back to 2017 when they played the Astros in the playoffs in that series. They just could not get the big hit when they needed it, especially in Houston. So, and that's going to be, the team that they got to pass, obviously, to get to the World Series this year, if they're going to get there. So, I know that they're working hard to get a pitcher, and yeah, it would be nice to add a pitcher, but I think we also need to add another bat somewhere. I just don't know where. I mean, you're not going to get rid of Donaldson. I don't know if they're going to get rid of.
I heard a couple of weeks ago on The Fan, and it was one of the hosts, and before I get to Matt Hurt in a second, that he was saying, oh, no, Donaldson, he adds so much to the team, and he's this locker room guy. And I look up every time I see this guy up at bat, he's hitting, 227 now with 9 home runs and 35 RBI, and you're trying to justify on the radio that Donaldson's been a good move? I mean,
No.
I don't know.
No, he's definitely not going to.
Exactly. No, exactly. No, listen.
You can't move him either, so you're kind of stuck with him, and this is where we are. And I thought he'd be a little bit better. I'm not saying he'd be MVP Donaldson that we.
Yeah, we talked about him during the offseason. We thought we'd get 20 home runs out of him, 25.
Yeah.
And we're not even going to get that from him.
Batting 6th or 7th in this lineup, you would think he could do that. But so far, now we're going into August next week, and he's still hitting 220. Like you said, home runs. He's
under 400 slugging. We're talking about an OBP of just under 700. It's just not acceptable. It's just.
He's either finally, his age has finally caught up to him, or he's got an injury and he's just not saying it. I don't know, but he's just awful. So.
Oh, he's definitely awful, though. There's no question that he's definitely awful here. And also want to give a shout-out to Brute Force for one of our guys here who's tuned in here, huge New York Mets fan. That is Matt Hurt, of course, who I don't know if I should say he's with SJC New York or not with SJC New York. I don't want to incriminate myself, so I'll just say from the team last year, and we'll see what happens. But Brute Force, obviously, a lot to get into here with that. Anything you want to say to Matt Hurt right now before I ask you some topics in the world of sports?
Well, we all know Matt Hurt's my guy, and I'm happy to see he's watching and supporting the show. I know he was recently at a Met game, so he's definitely supporting the team, and I know for a fact that soon enough we're going to be going to a Mets game with them. So that's exciting stuff from Matt Hurt, but he's doing real well, and he's really excited about the future of the program. So thanks for supporting us, Matt, and let's go Mets for sure. LFGM, though. LFGM.
Right, LFGM, but I want to get your perspective, actually, in a second, the Brute Force, because I'll get to the WNBA, because I feel like right now people want to hear baseball, and I'll get to the WNBA. I'm sure Anthony Fink will want to hear it. But, Daniel Vogelbach, last week you talked about him, and you said, we got to do more. And I'm not saying Daniel Vogelbach is the second coming of Babe Ruth or anybody else you could think of, but, he's looked pretty good so far. Do you expect this to continue? You're Mr. Confidence here, and I have to go back off with the comment that we were having back and forth on social media. How do you like this Daniel Vogelbach move so far?
Well, we all know, and the clip was just posted for everybody who's supporting the show about my comments last week on Vogelbach, which was basically, started with me.
He looks like a poor man's Kyle Schwarber, by the way. I have to say, for whatever reason, he's like a poor man's Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah, so my comments were started by me comparing him to Bartolo Colon and how much he weighed, how he couldn't run the bases. And obviously, the key to my comments was the loss of Colin Holderman. And right now, the way the bullpen is pitching, you are kind of worried about losing Holderman.
No, I'm very worried about the bullpen. I'm very worried about the bullpen.
Yes, but I will say over the last week, the way that Vogelbach has looked, it's made me feel a little bit better about Vogelbach. He has looked better at the plate. He has gotten on base. He has hit the ball hard. But at the expense of Holderman, I'm still questioning this decision. I'm not exactly 100% confident that this trade was still the right trade. But I feel that Vogelbach can help the lineup, but he's still limited. And right now, a bullpen piece is crucial to the Mets right now because I don't think, we were talking about how the lineup was struggling. The lineup hasn't been amazing, but they've been better.
We were talking about that even at the game last weekend. Because we were at the game and it was 0-0 Padres and Mets, and we were talking about this lineup, and still not impressive to me.
No, but you know what? I do want to give the Padres some credit. The Mets have had some trouble with the Padres, which we'll kind of talk about later in the season when we get towards the playoffs. But ultimately, their offense is fine. Their starting pitching, it couldn't be more exciting right now to be a Mets fan and watch starters pitch for the Mets. But the concern, it seems like it's every year, and it's every team, but especially the Mets, right now is the bullpen. And if Colin Holderman was in there, I think we feel a little bit better about it. But besides Edwin Diaz and a little bit of Adam Ottavino, there's not really a lot
I
to
gotta
get excited
say, I
about.
think it was Justin who said it the last week or the week before. Ottavino's been a lot better. The last 6 weeks, he's been much better. So Ottavino, I have to say, he might be the second guy you feel confident in behind Diaz right now.
I mean, for context, Trevor Williams is protecting a 2-run lead right now in the 8th inning. Granted, he's gotten 2 up, 2 down, but Trevor Williams is protecting a 2-run lead.
And who was protecting the 2-run lead the other night? David Peterson. What does that tell you about the confidence that Buck Showalter has in his bullpen piece?
It should tell you, Mr. Brufors, that you and Mr. Confidence on some things of this team still ain't going to be on the pedestal here.
Well,
Mr.
what it also told us is that Drew Smith was hurt, and now obviously that's another arm down and another arm needed for this bullpen.
True. Fair points here, and that segues me to Justin Gianelli, and I'll come back to Chris because I do want to come back to the Yankees in a different perspective. But, I mean, Justin, obviously a lot going on here with the Mets. Certainly, the Mets do take both games of the Subway Series from the Yankees. And the Mets the last couple of years actually have played pretty well against the Yankees. I remember there was a time when the Yankees pretty much, it was always a given that they would roll over the Mets in these series. But, Mets, look, the Brute Force does have a point. The Mets have kind of weathered this storm here, and DeGrom is coming imminently, so certainly we have a lot to look forward to, especially going into the next 5-game series with the Braves. But, Mets do seem like that they have weathered the storm here so far. We'll see, though, about Miami. Miami is a pesky team, and they have certainly hung around here, and they always seem to give the Mets fits. But give me your assessment on some of these moves that the Mets have made here so far going into Tuesday's deadline.
Sure, and so for context, the last time the Yankees actually won the Subway Series was 2017.
That was probably the last time I took the Subway, literally.
18 and 19, the teams split.
Yep, I remember that.
I'm sorry, 18, 19, 20, the teams split. And then last year the Mets won 4-2.
Yep.
And then right now it's obviously 2-0 with a chance for a split if the Yankees win both games in the Bronx. But, as for the moves, I agree with Brad that, it was tough to part with a bullpen piece when you really need bullpen pieces at this point. And now it's even more noticeable without Drew Smith. Even though Drew Smith has been struggling, it just signals that Billy Epler needs to make it happen with the bullpen. Now he's acquired 2 bats and a minor league left-handed reliever in Philip Deal. But, you get Tyler Naquin, who basically takes Travis Jankowski's spot.
Oh, good. Travis Jankowski.
He got DFA
today. Never see him again. Let's never see him again.
Naquin's got, a good defensive outfielder, slightly less speed than Jankowski, but, good power hitter. Actually homered yesterday in Cincinnati against the Marlins during the day.
I was watching some of that game yesterday. That was the afternoon game. Yep.
Naquin's a decent move. Knows the clubhouse a little bit because he was teammates with Carlos Carrasco and Francisco Lindor. They were a part of the 2016 team that went to the World Series against the Cubs. So he's got playoff experience, even though those numbers aren't all that great. And then Daniel Vogelbach, who seems to be an on-base machine.
Yeah, he's doing 7 out of 11 appearances his first that he got on base before.
Yeah,
He's
2 for 4 tonight, 2 doubles. 2 for 4 tonight, 2 doubles, a walk. He's been on base 3 times. I
can't figure it out. In Pittsburgh, the guy couldn't get on base. With the Mets, all of a sudden, it's like he's the second coming of Babe Ruth right now.
He's been good, and it helps lengthen the lineup, and it helps with the bench depth. We'll see where else they go, whether it's a JD Martinez or Trey Mancini or Wilson Contreras. We'll see where they go next for their bat. But so far so good. And yeah, the Mets are playing. The Mets are playing better baseball right now, especially from an offensive standpoint. This week they broke out on Sunday night, scoring the 8 runs in the 2 innings against the Padres to break that game open.
I felt like I had egg on my face when that happened because for those that are on social media, I post a clip about the Mets and even Justin, I think, was at the game. I think, if I'm not mistaken,
on Sunday, yep.
And all of a sudden, the Mets score a bunch of runs.
You post that, and then 2 seconds later, Pete Alonso hits a 3-run homer.
I'd like to formally thank Tom Rice for posting that because that was the ignition we needed. You know, a comment like that. We need a comment like
Boy,
that.
you're the first person in like months that thanked me for something. I mean, boy,
And
wow.
then look,
Thank
they
you for
scored-
that, Mr. Bruford.
They scored 6 runs against the Yankees in game number 1. They had that great first inning after Judge and Rizzo go back to back, and we're putting an immediate 2-0 hole. And then the Mets come back with 4 runs. Thanks to the Marte homer, the Alonso RBI double, and then the 2-run homer by Escobar. And then the offense just started to click again. Wednesday obviously was just a well pitched game. You get the big the big walk off late by Marte, and then tonight, offense is 6 runs.
Yeah, Alcantara. You know what? I mean, it was almost.
This was the night. This was one of those nights. If the Mets were to lose 3-2 or 2-1,
you would have said, "All right."
I would have not been mad about it because, as good as the Mets rotation has been, one of the few times I could say that the Mets did not have the upper hand was a night like tonight. Even though Chris Bassett's been pretty good, and we ended up getting 6 innings out of Chris. Even though he gave up 4 runs,
kind of reminds me of the Walker performance on Tuesday.
Yeah, it seems like anytime Bassett struggles early, he still finds a way to give up, get through the 6th, and that really helps the team. And tonight's one of those nights you just felt like, all right, we might not score much, but they give he gives up the 3 runs and the 3-run double to Rojas, and then in the first, and then immediately in the second inning, Mets score 3 to tie. And that's one of the things I think that has really re-emerged as this Mets team is that they're responding to runs scored. So they give up a run, and they automatically get that right back. And I think that was what the mojo of the team was the first 2.5 months of the season. It kind of been lost over the last 6 weeks, and we're kind of starting to see it again.
But that was my point. Listen, that was my point is that, like, you look at this team since they went on that West Coast trip, and I'll get to Billy in a second, and I'll get to some comments from Mr. Weiss. He's got some comments for us, so I promise to get to those because he's tuned in. But that's how I kind of felt for about 6 or 7 weeks. The Mets, like, they didn't play horrible, but it wasn't the first 2 months where the Mets, every series the Mets won. The Mets were consistent. They were clutch. They found ways to win, but like you said, since Sunday, you see a little bit of a change, and I think the momentum might be with this team.
But for the most part, to finish it off, for the most part, they're still winning series.
Yeah, I mean, 61-37 going into today. I mean, it's hard to say, well, this team is really fault, whereas last year it was like we were on the air at this time, and they were in first place, but it was almost like they were basically kind of like how Mike Tyson won the heavyweight title the second time. He was beating nobodies, whether it was Bruce Seldon, Peter McNeely, Frank Bruno again. The Mets were in first place really because everybody else just wasn't any good. And then the Braves kind of got their mojo at the trade deadline, made some great moves, and the Mets pretty much were a forgotten note here. But let me get to a few comments before I get to Billy McInerney, the returning Billy McInerney. And the Superforce wants to remind me that, speaking of the New York Liberty, as Anthony Finkel wants to mention it, that the Liberty are fighting for their playoff lives in a tight one with the Chicago Sky, the defending champions, and last I checked, 81-79 Sky. So the Liberty definitely need a win. We'll definitely talk about the game that we went to on Saturday, and I know Anthony Finkel probably doesn't really care much for the baseball talk, so he's kind of waiting for that, but we will get to, for sure, the Liberty game, for sure. Really interesting experience, but and he also says here, the Superforce. Is it the Superforce, the Superforce, or I get the names wrong these days? Because remember when we went to the game one Saturday, I couldn't figure out all the names.
No, I think you got his right. You got his right.
Good. I got his. I want to make sure because there's so many forces that may the forces be with all of you. But he says Mets get the real DeGrom, a lot of holes to be filled. Yeah, no question. I think that's going to be obviously for a rotation that's going to be already strong. So great comment. Loved meeting Mr. Weiss, and certainly you and Mr. Weiss, the two of you. I mean, that was like quite a. You guys were like the Twin Towers almost. It was almost like you guys were like the Long Island version of Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon and Ralph Sampson. Maybe just with a little bit more versatility. But Billy McInerney, I forgot the last time I've spoken to you. I forgot what it was about, what it was, and certainly I feel like the whole world has changed, probably figuratively and literally. But I mean, give me your impressions right now where we are with the Mets and Yankees. I'll come back to the Yankees with Chris in a second, but I really don't even know when the last time I spoke with you, and that might be a good thing. And how's things? And give me a state of the Mets and Yankees right now, where we are.
Yeah, it's been a while. Certainly longer than I'd hoped it would be.
It happens, man. It happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Justin said, the Mets are, like you guys also, the Mets are getting back to what they were doing early in the season, responding when they give up runs and, getting the timely hits they need. The lineup still, I think, isn't like the best lineup, the longest lineup necessarily, but they seem to have guys stepping up. I still wish Escobar would give up batting left-handed at this point. If he strikes out again.
On cue, he just struck out batting left-handed.
Pull us Cedric Mullins and go just bat one side full time. It worked for him, but I agree with Brad that I don't like giving up Holden, and I think the bullpen is a huge question mark. I'd like to see at least 2 arms added, if not 3, by the deadline. Certainly there's guys out there that can be had. Definitely. I mean, Naquin. I think Naquin's a good ad. I think he can do almost everything Jankowski is giving you. He can run, he can field, and he's also a better hitter. So certainly I like that. And the Yankees, I don't think, I think it's going to be a quiet deadline for the Yankees. I don't think they're really, I don't think they're interested in parting with like a top prospect to go after a big name guy. And I just don't see, the more middle of the road guys being a great fit for the Yankees where they are right now. I think they have plenty of, middle of the road guys, and they kind of need that one guy to push them over the top. So I think they're actually going to have a quiet deadline.
Really? Okay. That's interesting. I mean, Chris, how do you feel about hearing that? And while I do that, I want to give a shout out to a very good friend, Ron Laird. And Ron's been with me a long time, and I always love hearing from Ron because Ron has been with me for a long time. And he says here, he agrees with the brute force Brad Weiss. No surprise. Why am I not surprised? I agree. Giving up Holderman was a bad idea. Yeah, that could be one of those that, you might certainly regret it. But Daniel Vogelbach looks really good so far. But, Chris, after hearing some of Billy's things, and I'm seeing how this Yankees team has played the last month, I mean, are you expecting the same thing? Are you expecting a quiet deadline for the Yankees? Because I listen to the radio, and that's not quite the impression I get. But, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think just the opposite. I think they're going to be very active.
Right, that's what I think.
Yeah, I think they know they got holes, and they got to fill them. You lost Michael King. He's done for the year.
We talked about that last week as we went off the air. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he was basically second best reliever after Holmes in that bullpen. So to replace him, you got to get another bullpen arm. So far, Chapman has actually looked good his last 2 appearances. Britton's coming back at some point, but who knows, what kind of condition he'll be in. And then Sevy in the rotation. That's why they're hard. They're looking hard at Castillo and Montas right now. I'd hate to give up some of the prospects that they're asking for, but I think they have to. They got Peraza, who I think is going to be a really good player. The shortstop, he's ready. He should be up now, to be honest. But so far they're keeping him down there. I think if he's not moved, like let's say if Billy is right on what he's saying and they don't, he should be the starting shortstop because IKF made an error tonight again. He didn't it wasn't called an error, but it was definitely an error. But he cost them like 3 runs. So I would bring the kid up because he's obviously got a better glove than IKF, and all he has to do is hit 250, 260. So and that's what IKF has been doing. But
270. I think it's 274 he's got, but we're almost like zero production. I mean, one of the most light hitting. If the definition,
I'm not worried about the offense, and I don't think the team is worried about his offense. I think the defense has kind of let them down. He was a Gold Glove at third base. He wasn't a Gold Glove at short.
Right.
But they thought it would trend. All right, maybe not a Gold Glove shortstop, but at least average. But he's been making a lot of errors this year. I don't know whether it's with his arm or his glove. He has not been that great at short. So I don't think they're going to trade for a shortstop. They got these kids coming up. They got Volpe. They got Peraza. But I think they're going to use Peraza to get either Castillo or Montas or someone else. Maybe Rodon from San Fran. I've heard his name now. I don't know if San Fran's ready to start trading away guys. But I think the Yankees are going to be busy. I'm going to disagree with Billy. But he still may end up being right because, like he said, they might not want to give up their top prospect for a certain player. And maybe that's what's holding everything up. Cincinnati might be saying, hey, we want, player A and player B.
But I also feel like with this Yankees team, and we'll come back to some of the guys in a second, but I want to spend a minute on this because I feel like the way the Yankees had played pretty much up until about maybe 3.5 weeks ago, and to kind of how they're limping into the deadline, and especially now with Houston and how Houston's nipping at them, and we've seen how Houston pretty much has the Yankees number. I know that they got Benintendi, and Benintendi helps, no question. I mean, that's a guy Yankee fans have talked about for about 2 or 3 months. But I feel like for this team to not make any move and be what Billy said, I think that fan base is not going to let Hank Steinbrenner live that one down. I think Justin pretty much made that kind of state there, is that facial expression. That's kind of how I think every fan's going to feel times 10.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. They're already saying it now. I mean, people, I see it on social media. Everybody wants Castillo. Like give up whatever you can to get him. But I also think we need a bat. I've heard Peralta from Arizona, maybe. But that's nothing special.
Yeah, Arizona looks better lately. Yeah, I mean, they can see that.
I guess. But, yeah, it'll be interesting. I think the next couple of days are going to get really busy for a lot of teams, especially the Yankees. I think they're really going to make the move. Just depends on, how big.
I think the timing was just incredible. I know trades take a long time. They don't just happen in a mere second. But they lose to the Mets, and then literally 15 minutes after the game, the first thing you see on Twitter from Jack Curry, Benintendi to Yankees.
I don't think it was 15 minutes. I think it was like right when the game ended. Almost.
But it literally had George written all over it. Walk through to the Mets. Nope, but I'm bringing you in. But I mean, obviously, I know how trades work and
it probably
process and everything. It probably was finalized during the game, and we just didn't know about it.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And
by the way, Joey Wendell just fouled off a ball that would have, if he struck out, it would have been an immaculate inning for Edwin Diaz.
And I also want to give an update here. 5-3 Royals over the Yankees going into the bottom of the 8th. So that's that. And Mets score here. I want to get a Mets score for everybody here that is Mets fans. It's 6-4, bottom of the 9th, Mets over the Marlins. So
ball game.
Let's just update that. 3 strikeouts for Edwin Diaz. Unfair.
Well, what's this strikeout rate? Like 53% of the batters he's faced. Some crazy stuff like that.
I think the stat showed 52 when he came in. That has to go up. 3 batters.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
3 strikeouts, 10 pitches.
Well, 62 and 37, and certainly we'll get that stat for the 100-game mark. Yankees 67 and 33 going into today. Mets 62 and 37. It's been a very, very long time since the Mets had a 99-game record like this. I mean,
probably since 86. Let's be fair.
I think 88.
I was going to say either 88 or maybe 06. 06 will be 62. And I mean, I'll check it.
No, I don't think so. I don't think they were ever this good. I know they ended up 97 and 65, but I don't think they were ever that high over 500 this early.
Well, the crack staff is actually going to check it while we actually speak with the Brute Force Brad Weiss. And we are on Sportswire Radio, and we are speaking all things related here to the world of sports with some of my guys here. They're returning. Billy McInerney, of course, formerly of Elite Sports, Chris Bizzea of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter, and, of course, the legendary Brute Force Brad Weiss, who's part of so many things that I lost count. And, Justin, you are correct, because in 2006, the Mets were 59 and 41, so they are off the pace. And in 1988 here, thanks to the crack staff for giving us this stat here, the Mets, after 99 going into 100 games, were actually only 60 and 40. So, yeah, I would have to say it's 86. The only other year I could have thought that
and I have 86 up right now.
What do you got?
They were after game 100, which will be tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
They were 68 and 32.
Wow. Okay.
And the Mets have a potential of being 63 and 37. They're either going to be 63 and 37 or 62 and 38.
And for context, in 99, which I thought another year the Mets were good, but I remember they got hot at the end of the season, kind of similar to the 06, 59 and 41. And then also the 2015 team, which we know really came on very late in the season.
They were probably like 52 and 48.
Close, 52 and 48. Boy, maybe you had it before I did, but yeah, that just shows you. Though.
I swear to God, I just said that. I was not looking it up.
I mean, they've had countless seasons of 67 and 33, countless seasons, right? We're thinking about it, right? We only had this is it. This is the first one since '86. And Mr. Brufors, I'm going back to you, Mr. Brufors, because you put it up there. Now I have to ask you, for those that are watching this, especially on Facebook or YouTube as an example, how do you pull these images up? So, like, what do? I have to say, do you have an editor? Is Matt Hurt helping you? Is somebody helping you? I'm curious on this.
No, it's the power of Google Slides. You take a picture, you put it in a slideshow, and you present it when it's needed. And certainly, I've needed to put this term on the big board the last couple of weeks because Tom Rice, who was smashing that panic button over and over and over, I had to keep telling you, this is the word you needed to be saying, not panic, confidence.
No, we went from 10.5 to a game and a half.
No, we're not going there this week because you know what? The better team, all right, has still been playing better, and that's the New York Mets, okay? The Atlanta Braves, all right, with any competition.
Well, thank God they ran into the Phillies. I have to say, thank God they ran into the Phillies.
Any little competition the Braves,
Arizona.
any little competition that the Braves have seen, they haven't played well against. Yeah, they're beating Arizona and the Reds and everybody else who stinks, all right? But when they see a little competition, the Phillies, the Mets, the Dodgers, what have they done? Nothing. Close to nothing. And that's exactly who they are. Yeah, let's give them a round of applause for beating the bad teams. Okay, give them a round of applause. But ultimately, our team is still playing better, and even we're playing better with some of our positions who haven't even stepped foot on the baseball field, which we're going to get to right now.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean, listen, I hear you on some of those things. I mean, listen, there's no question that, look, the Braves did definitely take advantage of a soft schedule, and they beat the teams that they had to, and I think I equated it to almost like in college football, before you go into conference season, you get all those teams that are like unranked or they...
Like Ohio State playing Akron or something.
Michigan's had their games. I mean, Florida State used to have, like, teams you would, like, I don't even know.
I mean, Michigan did lose to Appalachian State.
Well, I mean, look, the point was that very similar to that. But, I mean, obviously those are things here. I mean, so, Justin, I know that you and the Brew Force definitely agree on the whole confidence thing and everything else here with the team. I mean, look, you can't argue. I mean, look, 62-37. I mean, just going back to it really quick, when you take a step back. No, listen, I mean, when you look at Met history, right, and we just rattled off some of the seasons where the Mets were good, right? 2015, they were only 52-48. 99, they were very good, but 59-41. 88, 60-40. 06, which was, I think, the best team I think I've seen in my lifetime, and probably
until this year right now.
Until this one, right? And they were, I think, 59-41, 59-40. And then this team's actually better than all those teams. I mean, so Justin, I guess there's a point there to be made.
If you look at some the teams in recent memory, even if you want to count the 16 team that made the playoffs, I mean, 15.
They were 61-62 until they had the soft schedule.
But that's what I'm saying. A lot of these Mets seasons, even when they are good, they're kind of just like stumbling along.
Even 2000,
like at this date. This date in 2015 was the Wilmer Flores crying game.
Yeah,
so,
I remember that.
And at that point, the Mets were stumbling along. They were not good. They were batting Eric Campbell and John Mayberry Jr. in the middle of the order. Who
was the guy they had to hit three? Was it Kirk Neuenhuis? Was he in the lineup?
Kirk Neuenhuis was there every day.
3 home runs in one game, and everybody was like,
I mean, this team this year is light years ahead of that team. I mean, this team has fielded a competent lineup at least every night, even though they've gone through their issues. But it just goes to show you how incredible. I think the incredible difference that A, Buck Showalter's made, and B, Max Scherzer's made, because I saw before the game. I think I forgot who had it, but the Mets since his return have a starter's ERA of like 1.88 since Max's return. Even though they went 25-16 without Max, their ERA as a starting staff was like over 4. So they were getting by. They were winning games, which is exactly why they're here right now. Because they were 9 games over 500 without Max Scherzer. Now you get him back. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Guess who's unofficially penciled in to start Tuesday?
Oh, we're going to talk about that next.
So I don't know how you don't feel good about this team right now.
Well, I mean, so far, so listen, I see it, the brute force. I see it, but I'm going to still say it, though. We have a 5-game series next week. That is still going to determine this division. The division's not, listen, it's not set.
Absolutely, no.
Now, hold on, Tom. Tom, hold on, because I actually want to reverse this real quick before we go to Billy. I want to ask you, Tom Bryce, how you feel about the Mets going into that series with the Braves. Because I know how I feel. I feel confident in that. All right, because everybody, Tom has talked religiously on this show about, the Braves always beat us, they always dominate, they always find a way to get in our way, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, but this season right now, the way this team's playing, this is the word that comes to mind when we're going to play the Braves. So you tell me how you're feeling when going into that series.
I'm going to be dead set. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm still dreading this series. You're not going to convince me. You're not going to convince me. The Mets' history against the Braves.
Been through more than you. That's why.
What's that?
Tom, you have been through more than he has.
Exactly. I listen. I still have the memory etched in my mind. 1998, the last weekend, the series of the season. The Mets were in the wild card, and they went to then Turner Field. The second year the ballpark was open, and the Mets. They played like the worst 3 games of the year they could have played. That last game of the season, I still remember it very well. It was like a really, really hot day for whatever it was in late September of 1998. And the Mets, I don't even think scored a run that day. I mean, we can go up and down the field. 1999, the NLCS. 2001, we played them, I think, the last week of the season. We came all the way back. You want to talk about teams that really were duds? Was that 2001 team. And all of a sudden, after 9/11, they never lost. Then they go into Atlanta, and the Mets just demolish them. I mean, so look, there's a history, and you're going to look at me and going to give me the look and talk about confidence, and I got you. But they have 12 more games with them. They got 12 more games with them. I think this team's definitely going to make the playoffs, but you're not going to convince me that the Atlanta Braves could still beat the Mets. You're not going to get me and go to be Salicata.
I'm not saying that the Braves are not going to beat the Mets, but Chris Pizzea said this a few weeks ago, right?
Yes,
he said, right, the worst that we're going to do against the Braves is kind of split, be close.
I'd be happy with a split. I would be happy with a split.
You got to be confident in that. I mean, you got to Justin's point about DeGrom pitching. We'll get more to that in a second.
DeGrom's in a second. Yes, we are.
DeGrom's going to be lined up to pitch against the Braves. Scherzer's pitching against the Braves. Taijuan Walker's pitching against the Braves. Okay.
And he froze because the brute force Brad Weiss and the confidence.
I was just about to say, until it tried to cut me off, you have all your best pitchers lined up to pitch against the Braves. I mean, Scherzer, DeGrom, Walker, all of them. I mean, they're all Carrasco, who's pitched well against the Braves this season. Okay. How can't you feel confident?
The only one who's not going to pitch against the Braves is going to be Chris Bassett, because Bassett, who pitched today, is going to go on Wednesday, and then they're going to call David Peterson up for the second game on Saturday. But everybody else
pitched well against the Braves
in the rotation for that series.
Last time he faced the Braves, he let up 2 runs, and that was in the 6th inning after he was throwing a 2-hitter. I mean, how can't you feel confident with your pitching going into that series?
Because it's the Atlanta Braves. That's why. It's the Atlanta Braves. You're not going to convince me because of the laundry. The laundry says Atlanta Braves on it and New York Mets. I've said it over. It's like the Yankees and the Astros right now. I was watching it with Anthony Finkel at Duffy's, and I watched the Yankees in Houston. And right now, Houston's beat the Yankees a couple times in the postseason or in the 2017 American League Championship Series. That's how I feel. Bulls and Knicks, same thing. Islanders and Penguins, until the Islanders beat them in 2019.
I gotta be honest on something completely.
Go ahead before I get to Bill, because I really want to get to Bill.
And because Tuesday's the trade deadline, it could change. As it stands right now, the Braves lineup doesn't exactly incite fear into me, other than Austin Riley.
Travis really hit well.
Okay. Marcelo Zuna's not been great. That lineup doesn't. Dansby Swanson's been good, but he strikes. They strike out more than anybody. And one thing the Mets are good at as a pitching staff is striking people out. So look, the faces could change. Who knows who's going to be on this team?
Oh, listen, that's what I say Tuesday.
Who knows who's going to be on the Mets on August 3rd?
I'll tell you what. We'll see on Tuesday. I'll tell you what. We'll see after the deadline what's done here. But let me come back to Billy.
Billy, please tell him. Please tell him.
I'm going to ask him. So, Billy, do you feel the same way as these two individuals here?
Now, you know what? I completely agree with Brad and Justin. I am confident going into this series. And let me tell you a big thing I'm confident about. Who have been the Braves' two best pitchers this year? Max Fried, Spencer Strider. Max Fried lines up against Max Scherzer. Spencer Strider lines up against Jacob deGrom. I like both those matchups. I'm not worried. You know, Ian Anderson's had a brutal year this year. He's going against Taijuan Walker. There's other than Carrasco versus Wright, there's no pitching matchup that scares me. I genuinely think the Mets come out of this series winning 4 of 5 games. And they end up, putting
I'll take 2 out of 5. I got to be honest. I'll take the 2. I'll just
Tom, come on, Tom. Come on.
You don't want to lose 4 out of 5. I'll take 2 out of 5.
We don't want to take 2 out of 5. Come on, Tom. Really?
To be fair, even though I disagree with Tom, if you win 2 out of 5, you do only lose 1 game in the standings.
Exactly. You want to play it safe. You don't want to lose any ground.
I think the Mets could do better.
I'm not going to go Sal Licata on you, who earlier said, oh, well, we're going to bury him next week. I mean, this guy should be off the radio, first of all, with a comment like that, because there ain't no way in hell the Mets are going to sweep the Braves. They're not going to do that. They could win 3 out of 5. I definitely think they could win 3, maybe 4. But realistically, in a 5-game series, you're not going to sweep the team the 5 games. It's just not going to happen.
Braves will win a game.
Exactly.
But we're not going to be satisfied with 2 out of 5. I mean, come on.
Realistically, if you're up by 3 games, you only lose a game. You don't want to lose 4 out of 5.
Still, just look at the word up there. Confidence.
I understand that.
Who's the better team right now? We are. And it's our home field. Our fans and everyone who's a Mets fan should be confident in this team that they can take at least 3 out of 5 against a team that we're better than.
I want to come back to Chris because I want to talk Aaron Judge in a second, but I really do because I actually want to talk the Yankees and I want to be down the line because there are people that want to hear the Yankees. But I will say one more thing on this. I mean, yes, the Mets are a good ball club, considering that, Mark Canha really has not been that great. Escobar has been a bust. I mean, yes, the lineup has not been great. They've done a good job. Starting pitching's been very good. Bullpen has been okay. They've done a good job. And I think Justin made the point, having a manager like Buck Showalter has definitely made the difference with this team. Because if Luis Rojas or the other guy that was the manager of this team, we would be talking about 52-47 right now because those 2 guys would have found ways to lose the game. So that's here nor there. But let me come back to Chris here because obviously Aaron Judge now is the first player in Major League Baseball. He had hit 40 home runs. And I'm looking how this all develops. And I hear some talk about Soto and everything else. I mean, now that Judge has gotten red hot here, I mean, is there a place here for Juan Soto and Aaron Judge on the same team? Do you buy into that? I mean, how do you feel right now about all that? Because, I mean, it's a big chatter, and I'm sure you're aware of it. You guys, obviously, with the Talking Rivals are a big part of it. You had a space a little while ago, and I'll bring in Rob Maraska in a second. We'll get his thoughts. But, I mean, what do you make of that now that Judge is all of a sudden back on track?
I do not think they would trade for Soto right now.
Okay.
I think they're concentrating more on pitching right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think they're even thinking about Soto.
Not as a safety valve in case you lose Judge?
Well, this is my other thing I was going to get to.
Sure.
I think if Soto is not traded now and he makes it to the offseason, I think that's when the Yankees will pivot if they can't re-sign Judge. Then they'll try to acquire Soto because now you don't have Judge. But I don't think you're going to have both because how are you going to sign Aaron Judge to say a $35 million a year deal for 7 years, around, and then you're going to add Soto who wants $40 million? Is that what you've been asking for? At least, maybe more. I don't know. But I don't think they could have both. It just doesn't make sense. And then you add in Cole making $30 million. And then you add Stanton making $20 million. It just, I don't know. I don't think it makes any.
And Stanton worries me because he's injured yet again with Stanton. Stanton's always injured.
They ain't going nowhere with him. I mean,
no.
Plus, he's got a no trade clause, so we're kind of stuck with that guy. But yeah, I don't think you're going to see them trade for Soto right now in the offseason. And if Judge leaves, yeah, I definitely see it. But when we get to that point, then we'll worry about it. But I have a feeling Soto's going to get traded now. Not today, but
And let me ask you a follow-up then on that with Soto, because I've heard a couple of teams. One of them surprises me because I don't even know if they could afford him long-term, and that's the St. Louis Cardinals, obviously, because they certainly might have the minor league system. I've heard rumblings with the Padres. I've even heard, to the Brew Force's point, the Atlanta Braves out there, and we're joined by Rob Maraska. We'll get to him in a second. But, I mean, from your vantage point, because obviously you and Patrick talk about a lot with the other teams in Major League Baseball, not just the Yankees or the Mets. I mean, who do you think would maybe have a leg up on a Juan Soto?
Well, I think that's what just the teams you're talking about. I think San Diego. I think St. Louis. All those teams.
I think him with St. Louis would be interesting. Goldschmidt, Arenado, and him, that middle of the lineup. You want to talk about Thunder right there? That would be.
And they have the prospects, right? They have
Yep.
guys that are up already. They have guys in AAA that are ready to come up. So I think that's a team that could do it. San Diego, we've heard. We were talking about that earlier on the space. I mean, I've been hearing that on MLB Central that San Diego is a team that's really.
Do you think St. Louis? See, I get San Diego because you got Tatis, you got Machado. I think I could definitely see that. But I mean, do you think a team like St. Louis could afford him? Because you've got Goldschmidt and Arenado, you're paying a lot of money for. I mean, that historically is not. They're not the Yankees in that market. Yes, their fan base is rabid, but I mean, you think that they could afford him long term?
Listen,
Look at the Padres. Look at what they're paying.
and listen, you also got him controlled for what, 2 years, right?
True.
Arenado opt out.
2 years. If like you said, if they can't afford him, then they'll move him for 3, 4 prospects, maybe 5 prospects. So I can see it. You know, it's. But I also heard, and I think Justin said it too, that supposedly the Nationals are going to make one last effort to sign him.
Yep.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, I don't think he's going to agree to a contract because I think he wants out. But I think from a PR side, the team has to do whatever they can to try to sign him. So you know what? Give him another offer and call his bluff, and make him say no. And then you can turn around to the fans and say, hey, we tried our best. You know, we gave him whatever the money he's going to be offered. So.
I personally always like to see players stay with a team long term. I always like to see that. I mean, this is a guy that if you can keep him, this is going to be the guy that franchise would have. I know they've had Zimmerman. I know they've had other players, but this really would be the guy. So I personally, regardless of the Mets or the Yankees or anybody else, I like to see him stay in Washington. That's just me. And Anthony Finkel obviously chimes in because he hears Rob Maraska. And so I'm here with Rob Maraska. Obviously, you've heard some of the talk here. I mean, I know you're going to be heavy on the Mets side. So obviously, Mets here certainly, I guess you could say, have weathered the storm. You look at it last weekend here, we were on the air, and certainly the Mets looked like they had hit a rough patch after the All-Star break. But the brute force Brad Weiss seems to be in a confidence mode. And this is the Mets now have a 4-game winning streak. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's the first time in a while the Mets have had a 4-game winning streak. I mean, it's a team that's been 62-37, but if you take a step back, and this might
2 weeks
be,
ago.
but other than that, they've had not many big winning streaks. I mean, if you look at this team to one way, if you want to objectively defend the brute force Brad Weiss, if you want to be objective on that, this is a Mets team that really hasn't had that 7, 8, 9, 10-game winning streak. You see teams like Houston, Atlanta, even the Phillies had a long winning streak, and the Yankees have obviously had their runs. Other teams like Toronto, Boston, Seattle have had huge runs. But this Met team really hasn't had that. So, I mean, your temperature right now when it comes to this team?
Well, tonight was a good comeback win, okay, because, it started off shaky. What's going on now is Marte is just hitting him and Alonso, but Marte is just
I think Marte, I look at this is one of those underrated moves in the offseason because this guy, he's just a clutch player, good player.
Yeah, he almost hit for the cycle tonight. I mean, he's just hitting. You got the walk-off against the Yankees, which was great. And, this week has been great. And, yes, there's a lot of confidence in this New York Mets team right now.
All right, well, we'll certainly see what happens, and we are here on Sportswire Radio speaking all things related here to the world of sports. And if you like what you hear from us on Facebook, we will be here at Sportswire Radio, and I want to give a shout-out to actually somebody who's tuned in who's a world champion in the world of professional wrestling and in backyard wrestling. And I'm going to say it's backyard wrestling, not the way it was when I was admittedly doing backyard wrestling about 20 years ago. And that is the interstate champion in Wrestling Championship Entertainment. That is James Marshall. And Mr. Marshall just had a match that just took place a little while ago over for our friend over at Wrestling Championship Entertainment. And I think that Mr. Marshall wants to come on here on Sportswire Radio at some point. So we want to make sure that we recognize Wrestling Championship Entertainment for their support of Sportswire Radio, as they just had a huge show this past night here. Red, White, and Bruised. Tomorrow is Spirit in the Sky, and I want to make sure that everybody follows Wrestling Championship Entertainment for the likes of the unhinged James Marshall, of course, the interstate open weight champion. So certainly very happy to be tuned in from him. And also, if you like what you hear from us, do give us a like on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. And 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. If you like what you hear from us, tune in anytime to sportnarium.com/player, where you'll hear the likes of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, the Baseball Banter Show, the Brute Force Brad Weiss, I'm sure at some point, Billy McInerney, Rob Maraska, you name it, we play it here. And James Marshall also lets me know that Red, White, and Bruised is done. Yes, I'm aware of that, Mr. Marshall, because we had on your fellow champion, Craven Rage, 2 days ago, and obviously he's our reigning, defending Universal Grand Slam Wisconsinite champion, so obviously we're well aware of that. And certainly, Mr. Marshall, I would like to get you on here in the show. Obviously, management has reached out to us here, and also have something here from Chris Pizzea I'd like to address, and the fact that is, speaking of trades, and I think it was Justin that said maybe we'll get some big news here on Sportswire Radio. Well, it looks like we got some news here, it looks like.
Whoa.
It looks like we got some
now.
We got some big news here on Sportswire Radio, and thank you, Mr. Marshall, for tuning in. Thank you for your support and the entire company's support. But the Seattle Mariners, it looks like, have moved one step closer maybe to finally returning to the postseason, because they've taken off a name that Yankee fans and others have wanted on the board, and that is Luis Castillo. And let me get some reactions here first, and let me go to Justin, because Justin obviously had the first reaction, and we'll get the guys' take on it. So, Justin, I mean, what do you think here, Luis Castillo, now a member of the Seattle Mariners?
First of all, I'd like to know for what, because I thought this was definitely a name that the Yankees needed. It's a guy that the Yankees should have been hot and heavy for, but at the same time, it takes two to tango, and if the Reds were not, interested in what the Yankees had to offer, then they obviously moved on, and Luis Castillo to Seattle. And I mean, this really fortifies everything that the Mariners have been doing the past couple of off seasons by signing players. You signed the reigning AL Cy Young winner Robbie Ray, and now you're really fortifying a rotation that complements a very strong lineup, and the Mariners are really making that push. It's been 21 years.
I can't believe it. 2001.
Long time coming. Ever since they set the record of 116
That was
wins.
the year of Ichiro. That was the year
It's almost
of Ichiro.
it's almost like they made a deal with the devil to break the Yankees win record. You can't return to the playoffs for a long time coming. But here they are at 54 and 46, and they are sitting. Let's see if this
What are they in the second wild card, if I'm not mistaken?
Yep, second wild card, about a game up. They're a game up on the Tampa Bay Rays.
And Toronto's the first wild card.
Oh, no. Toronto's the first wild card.
Yep, Toronto's first, Seattle second.
Tampa third. This is huge. I mean, this is an absolute W for the Mariners. I mean, let's see.
It's kind of a reversal, because years ago it was Ken Griffey Jr. going from Seattle to Cincinnati, and now Luis Castillo's going to Seattle. So kind of almost a reverse there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm still waiting to see. I'm still waiting for it to circulate out and see what nobody exactly has what the package looks like just yet. But I mean, first reaction is wow. I mean, W for the Mariners. This is a big L for the Yankees right here. Now you have to shift your attention to Frankie Montas.
Well, I'm going to get Chris's
It's a
reactions here.
bit of a
So
step down.
Billy McInerney might have knew something here. And I have John Gonzalez of the Sports Authority group here. Of course, the Sports Authorities group does a great job in promoting Sportswire Radio. And John has a thought or two on that in a second. Before I get to John, of course, if you are on Facebook right now, please go over to the Sports Authorities group. Because I know Chris is over there always posting. I know that the Brute Force is always there. Anthony Finkel is always there. But I do want to recognize our reigning, defending Wrestling Championship Entertainment Universal Grand Slam Wisconsinite champion, Craven Rage, is in the house. So I want to make sure I acknowledge the champ. Certainly, it was a pleasure speaking with the champ. And we will have the champ back on in about a week or so. So we will speak with him soon. But let me come up to John Gonzalez, because apparently John Gonzalez knows something that nobody else does. And that's why he has the Sports Authorities group before I get to some of the guys here. And he says the deal is set. Soto to the Cards for third base. Jordan Walker, outfielder. Dylan Carson, left-handed pitcher. Matt Liberatore, did I get that right here? Shortstop,
You did, but he didn't.
Shortstop Mason Wynn, and right-handed pitcher Mike McGreevy. So John Gonzalez knows something that I don't know, which is not surprised because I know nothing. But Billy, I mean, I see you kind of jump in there. I mean, you believe in that, and what do you think about Castillo to the Mariners?
No, I don't. I don't believe that. For a few reasons. First of all, Matt Liberatore is not a player. You're thinking of Matthew Liberatore, the left-handed pitcher. So we'll start with that.
No, Gonzalez, come on, you're killing me.
But I
haven't
don't
seen that
believe
yet.
that. I think Soto wants to be the Padres or the Dodgers.
Okay.
I know the Dodgers.
God helps if the Dodgers get him.
He goes to the
If the Dodgers get him, everybody complaining about the Yankees being the evil empire. No, the Dodgers to me would be times 10. Seriously.
The Dodgers get him is not worth watching the rest of the season.
Exactly.
Like,
That's how I feel. That's how I feel.
Castillo, I mean, the Castillo trade, I can't say I'm surprised. You know, I didn't think Jared Depoto was going to sit out the trade deadline. You know, the guy makes more trades than anybody.
True.
You know, I don't know. I want to see like what the package was before, you know, I make any judgments. I still haven't seen anything on that yet. But certainly he makes them legit. I think he gives them another good starter to pair with Robbie Ray. And they're a good team, the Mariners. They're, you know, they don't get talked about much, but they've got a real solid team there, you know, and you know, it's I mean, here's the crazy stuff though. They have the prospects to make a run at Soto. They've got some guys coming up the pipe.
You imagine him with Rodriguez? I mean, that would be some pairing there. Could you imagine that?
I wouldn't put it past the Porter to go after him if he thought he could sign him.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting here. And John Gonzalez, basically, I guess all I'm going to say is I'm not going to post his comment, but he apologizes for the typo. So we want to make sure we give John a pass because John has been a good friend here. But certainly, Mariners make a big move here. And I'm looking at you, Chris, because I'll come back to the other guys in a second. But, I mean, how do you feel about this? I mean, Justin did make a good point. Obviously, this takes the Yankees out of the equation here. Is there a plan B, or was this always kind of you thought all along that Castillo wasn't coming to the Bronx?
No, I had a feeling he was going to come here, but you got to remember, you know, just like you said earlier, it takes two to tango.
Right.
That was perfect. You know, like they might not have liked our prospects that they were offering. And they might have wanted, let's say, Volpe, and the Yankees weren't ready to give him up, obviously. So that's what it comes down to. And they probably liked the package that Seattle was offering more than what the Yankees were offering. And they probably went back to the Yankees and said, listen, we're going to take this offer and you make yours better. And that was probably it. And you know what? The deal, you know, the John Gonzalez deal that he was mentioning, I could see that happening. I mean, that's been rumored, you know, and we just said it earlier. St. Louis and San Diego were the top two teams going after Soto right now. So it's possible, you know. But I also heard today that they were going to make one last offer to him, you know, to try to sign
I
him.
think, was it Justin that said that? I think, Justin, you said that right about 15 minutes ago about Soto and the Nationals. They'll make one more.
They plan to make one more offer, and then it's like an 80% certainty that Soto will be dealt before August 2nd. So, you know, it's still worth watching this weekend. So, and I'm still waiting. Come on, you figure by now that now the prospects would leak.
Well, I'm sure. Listen, we're going to be here for at least another hour plus, so I'm sure by the time that we're here and off the air, I'm sure that we'll get the full details on that. And certainly, the brute force Brad Weiss once again had technical difficulties, so we couldn't hear how confident he was about the trade for whatever reasons. But we'll come back to him. But even for you, Rob Maraska, obviously watching afar. I mean, Luis Castillo goes to the Mariners again. An interesting franchise because they haven't been to the postseason since 2001, which is a lifetime ago and an eternity. And you think about a franchise that hasn't been to the postseason that long, but it looks like maybe this year with an extra wild card, recent winning streak, and Mariners are going for it here, Mr. Maraska. And do you think the Mariners now have a leg up on breaking that streak and returning to the postseason for the first time since 2001?
Well, with the new playoff format, I think they do, and this just shows that they're going for it. I didn't see this coming. I don't know if you guys saw this one coming, but this came out of left field. So to me, this is just saying that the Mariners are going to go for it. And come on, they have to do something. They haven't been there since 2001.
That's a long time. You think
That's
about
crazy.
A long time in baseball. I mean, there are teams. Listen, the Marlins have won a World Series since then. They were in the postseason in 2020. Almost everybody made the postseason. Right? You think about all the teams that have been to the postseason. I mean, the Orioles have had a couple of trips to the postseason. The Royals won a World Series. Heck, even the Pirates. The Pirates went to the postseason about 3 or 4 different times. I mean, you could go down the list of teams that you wouldn't have thought made the playoffs, but they went to the postseason. Toronto had a couple of postseason berths in the middle of the last decade. I mean, the White Sox have been to the postseason a few times. I mean, a lot of teams you think of. The Phillies won a World Series, unfortunately, since that run. I mean, so, usually we think about, okay, the usuals, the Yankees, the Braves, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, the Cardinals, the Indians.
All right, here we go.
All right, what do you got? What do you got for me?
All right, it's 3 of the Mariners' top 5 prospects: Noel V. Marte, Levi Stout, Edwin Arroyo, and then Major Leaguer Dylan Moore.
So, what do you think about that? You think that's a high return for a guy that
that's a big price to pay.
Is that a move that
you're
basically
top 5 prospects? That's a hefty.
Let me ask you a follow-up on that, and I'll come to the Brute Force in a different perspective. Is that a move that, because we just spoke about the postseason and 21 years out in the postseason, and it was a franchise that did have a little bit more higher expectations, had a strong finish last year. Do you think, Justin, that's a move where maybe that's a general manager who might be on the hot seat if his team don't get to the postseason this year based on expectations? It's kind of one of those moves that similar to what the Blue Jays did, speaking of them a few years back when they brought in guys like David Price and others. You think that's a fair assessment?
100%. I mean, Jerry Dipoto certainly should be on the hot seat. The last year was the year that they were supposed to break the playoff drought. They had a good year, but they kind of just didn't have enough. They didn't have enough steam down the stretch to make the postseason. And then this year to get off to a rough start, and they were under 500 for quite a bit. And now they're 15 games over, and make this trade for Castillo. Yeah, I think they were forced to make an overpay, as opposed to what maybe a team like the Yankees or the Dodgers or the Cardinals, what they might have put in for Castillo. And I think Dipoto was like, I gotta do what I gotta do. And you know what? It looks like it was a hefty price.
It very well might have been, and I want to give a shout out, by the way, to Aunt Laura, the Brute Force, and what a pleasure it was meeting Aunt Laura last week at the Barclays Center. And the Yankees, by the way, boy, they have certainly turned it on here. 8 runs in the 8th inning, and she wants to remind us that Aaron Judge, 41 home runs. Listen, right now, for those that are watching, if you're really thinking about that real record, he's actually back on pace to actually hit 62 again. He's got 41 now and 101 games played, so if you actually do the math, I mean, for those out there that want to hear some Yankee talk and some good Yankee stuff, because I promised I would go right down the line here, like Shawn Michaels was when he was a referee, always making sure we go down the line. Judge is on a pace for history, so certainly.
So at what point is he busted for PEDs?
Stay tuned. Hopefully we get the news on Sportswire Radio first. I'll say that subjectively. But Castillo, by the way, 4-4 with a 2.86 ERA, 14 starts, 90 strikeouts in 85 innings. He's got a whip of 1.07, 63 hits only allowed in 85 innings, give up just 7 home runs and 28 walks. So he's a certified ace, and it's a huge move. Now, the Brute Force, I want to ask you this in a different question, because I think for you, you've obviously been a player. You've had a lot of success, and I'll get to John Gonzalez in a second. But how would you feel now in the locker room of Seattle? Because I know you're Mr. Confident, so I know I'm going to get the answer that I'm hoping for here. So you look at it, you're a franchise, and you know it. You know when you're in that locker room, you haven't been to the postseason in over 20 years. There were guys that were little babies, don't even remember 2001, don't even remember 2000, Ken Griffey Jr., all that stuff, right? So if you're in that locker room now, you got to feel like you've got an extra boost, because now you landed one of the premier chips in all of baseball, and it's almost got to give you that extra, quote-unquote, as you may say, confidence to finally break that streak and return to the postseason. So talk to me then how you'd feel right now as a player in the Seattle Mariners locker room.
Oh, I feel really confident. Like you said, I feel confident. I feel great. Except if I was former Met Chris Flexen. If I was Chris Flexen, I might be a little disappointed because I might have just lost a starting role in the rotation. So he might be the only guy to be upset. But the rest of the team is going to be ecstatic. I mean, this is a team, like you said, this whole drought. My only issue, number one, obviously Justin just laid out, the details of the trade. That is a ton to give up, especially, everybody's talking about it, and this is true, and I'm sure Seattle fans, if they're listening, all right, will say, all we want is just to make the playoffs again. Well, okay, maybe this is going to help you make the playoffs, okay? And that's not even guaranteed, because there are some teams competing, including teams like the Orioles who just won't stop, who are still in that.
The Orioles, I mean, just what a story. What a story.
So,
I think they won again tonight, too.
So
I
Seattle.
think they had a Boston now, right? If I'm not mistaken, they were 49 and 51.
Yes.
There you go.
They're 2 games over 500. Yes.
There you go.
And listen, Seattle, this makes me feel a little bit more confident that they're going to make the playoffs. But any further than that, I mean, I think basically just like Chris Pizzea and the Yankees, the Mariners have a similar issue. They can't beat the Astros.
They have my issue with the Braves, you're saying then.
Oh, no. Don't go there, okay? That's a different story right now, okay? But, listen, I mean, the Astros destroyed them. The Mariners were on like a double-digit winning streak, and the Mariners.
Did you hear the stat last night that the Seattle Mariners something like 5-28 their last 33 games in the state of Texas, or some like crazy number like that? I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen that bad. Even the Mets have played better in Atlanta than Seattle has in Texas. I mean, that's a really bad stat.
No, that's bad. And like I just was saying, they won like double-digit games in a row, and Houston came into Seattle and swept them. Tonight, they're beating them 9-0. Even though Verlander pitched, Robbie Ray pitched on the other side and didn't look so great against the Astros. So that definitely concerns me. But when it comes to making the playoffs, they have a rotation that can make the playoffs. Castillo, the rest of the rotation, we talked about Flexen, but we talked about Robbie Ray. We talked about Logan Gilbert, which I was trying to remember his name. Logan Gilbert, who's had a great year. Marco Gonzalez, who's a solid left-hand pitcher, who has a 3.6 ERA. I mean, they have the pieces to be a solid rotation. And their lineup, I will say it's not as good as the Mets, but it's kind of similar to the Mets. Where
I kind of agree with you.
Runs, they don't have the big bopper. They got Rodriguez, and they have Ty France. But the rest of the lineup are just guys that get on base, hit some singles, hit some doubles, and manufacture runs. So they do.
Brad, you know what they have that we don't?
Go ahead.
They have a catcher with 14 home runs. Cal Raleigh is 14 home runs, 37 RBIs.
So,
a Met catcher with 14 home runs it's been a long time since the Mets had a catcher with 14 home runs and 37 RBIs.
I will say that's currently. Right now, we don't have a catcher with 14 home runs. But, we'll see if that changes. So, ultimately, if I'm a Mariners fan, I'm feeling good, but not great about making, a push in the playoffs. But making the playoffs, which I know they want to do, this makes us feel a lot better, obviously, making the playoffs.
I would certainly think so. And obviously, I know if you're a Seattle Mariners fan, you certainly want to make sure that the Houston Astros aren't on the schedule for a while. And certainly, maybe if you do, maybe kind of have that little league like forfeit rule. I think it's the second time in 2 weeks I've referenced that rule. But let me get to John Gonzalez. I want to come back to Chris because John kind of asked this question maybe directly more to somebody like a Chris, although I think you referenced it already, Chris. And he says the Castillo trade opens the door for Frankie Montas to the Yankees. You agree with that? You think that's a fair assessment from Mr. Gonzalez?
Yeah, he was definitely at plan B, for starters. Problem is, now the A's are going to ask much more for Montas, right? Because now Castillo's off the board, so now Montas becomes the number one option for teams. So, Waldichuk, yeah, that he'll be part of the deal, but he's not going to be. I don't even think he's going to be the centerpiece. They're going to want probably one of their top prospects. Waldichuk is not, I don't think, a top 5 prospect for them. So, yeah, I think that price for Montas just went up a little bit. And we'll see if the Yankees can match up with the A's. They've done it in the past. Maybe they can do it again. I hope so. But we'll see. The one thing I'll say about the Yankees and Cashman is
sure
he always pulls a deal that nobody expects. Like everybody's expecting Montas or Castillo or something like that. A name's going to come out of nowhere, just like last year with Rizzo. We came out of nowhere and got Rizzo. There was no talk about Rizzo. It was mostly Rizzo to the Red Sox. And then the Yankees came out of nowhere and got him. So I think that's what's going to happen. Maybe they get Montas, but I'm also looking for a name that we haven't heard yet in the trade rumors. And he's just going to get somebody and people are like, oh, we didn't get that. So
actually, whose name I saw today is a plan C for the Yankees if they don't get Montas or Castillo? Noah Syndergaard.
Yeah.
We've talked about him on a few different shows here on Sportzwire. There was an article I read out there. Was it the Daily News? There was one article out here in the New York papers that had mentioned Noah Syndergaard to the New York Yankees. And that would be interesting. That would be but wouldn't be surprising because in Yankee history, they've picked up former Mets. I mean, we've seen it, David Cohn, Doc Gooden. I mean, there's a long list of former Met, that go to the Yankees and have a rebirth of their careers. So, I mean, I could certainly see that being a possibility. And looking at the standings here going into tonight, the Yankees 67-33, about to be 68-33. Toronto 55-45 going to today. Tampa 53-47. The Baltimore Orioles, what a story, 51-49. Certainly, it's been a while since they've been 51-49. Red Sox 50-50. Interesting. In last place in 500. So that's a very, very interesting. Almost reminds me of the AFC North last year. AL Central, which is going to be kind of the crown of 84, 85 wins. It's Minnesota hanging on. Cleveland, game and a half behind those White Sox. What a dud, but still only 3 games back. And Detroit and Kansas City dead in the water. Houston, again, steamrolling everybody on the Yankees' heels, 65-35. The aforementioned Seattle Mariners, 54-46. And you've got the Rangers, Angels, and A's pretty much dead and buried. And in the East, as we've talked about it, you've got the Mets and Braves, 3 games apart from each other. Phillies, 52-47. Kind of hanging around there, where Justin said kind of have the 82-win vibe to them in his baseball banter show. Listen to Justin on the show, and that was an interesting point. I kind of agree with you on that. Then you've got the Brewers and Cardinals separated by 2.5 games. And then you've got the Dodgers, which we've talked about. If they get Soto, listen, basically just everybody just give up. Just give up. You got the Padres, 55-45. The Giants, who I'm going to get to in a minute because I have a few thoughts on them, 49-54. And then you got the Diamondbacks and Rockies. And then John Gonzalez also comes in here, and thank you, John, for this. Would be nice for the Yankees if the A's include Sean Murphy with Montas in the trade for prospects. You agree with that, Chris? I see you nodding. You have a thought on that?
I mean, it would be great. Problem is, I think Sean Murphy is making next to nothing. He's not making much money. So I don't know if the A's are going to want to have to move him. They're only moving guys that they're not going to be able to afford after this year or money. And I don't think Murphy's making much. So I would take him, obviously, because offensively, Higgins giving us nothing. A catcher and Trevino is coming down to earth. He's really,
He had a great month, and now he's, kind of went south a little bit.
He's down since that beginning. So, I would not mind it,
All right, so that's a good point there from John. Thank you, John, for that. I'm sure John will have more comments in here. But let me come back then to some of the other guys here, because obviously I got some of that. And the Baltimore Orioles continue to come up here. And here's the Orioles here, 51-49. And they're right there. I mean, obviously, it was a month ago. We were talking about everybody that the Orioles should trade. And yet here they are. Now they're over 500. I mean, what do you say? Let me go to a Rob Moroska first, and then I'll come to the Brute Force and some of the other guys. I mean, you got this Orioles team, 51-49. They've punched way above their weight class. We've talked about them quite a bit. I mean, obviously, it's a team that, listen, they're right there for the wild card. I mean, there's no reason why that they couldn't right now with the run they're on make the playoffs. Will they be like what Justin said last week in Sputter? Maybe, but right now they're certainly making a strong case that maybe they should be a team to, at the very least, stand patter. I don't even know, maybe even add a player. But, Mr. Moroska, I mean, what do you say if you're an Orioles fan right now? I mean, how do you feel about a team like this in terms of your fans, your fellow fans? You're winning all these games, and I almost think it sends a mixed signal if you're going to move one of these players you got, Mancini or Mullins. I mean, what do you do here if you're the Orioles?
Well, they're a great story right now, of course, but do we think they're going to continue for the rest of the season playing like this? Hey, they may.
But I look at the rest of the American League, though. I mean, Toronto's hot right now, but do you really believe in them? You've got Tampa, which had a lot of injuries. Boston's definitely come back to earth. And then you've got the Central. I mean, but none of those three teams are good, right? So you got that.
No.
And then you got Seattle, who we talked about. I mean, I got to be honest. Baltimore, why can't they hang around? These teams I just rattled off, maybe Seattle's the best of them. None of them are impressive.
You know, they definitely could hang around, but listen, if someone's going to overwhelm them with some prospects for some players, you know, they may have to go for it because, you know, we don't know where they're going to go, but you got Houston in the playoffs. You got the Yankees. You know, there's a lot going on there. So
right, but the rest of it drops off significantly.
Yes,
I mean,
does.
I look at some of these teams. You know, I know Toronto's played much better since they changed managers. Okay, fine. You know, Tampa really doing it on smoke and mirrors, and they've come back to earth a lot in the last month. Boston, I don't know how much longer they're going to be at 500. You've got Minnesota, Cleveland, and Chicago. Meh. And then you've got Seattle, who we just spoke about. So, I mean, I look at Baltimore, and maybe why not them?
Yeah, well, you never know. You guys have to excuse me. I am fighting a killer cold.
Well, I hope it's not COVID. I hope you don't have COVID.
No, I tested negative. It's not COVID.
All right, because one of the wrestlers that we do work with, unfortunately, he was supposed to be in a huge match tonight, and he messaged me that he has COVID. So, unfortunately, you know, that's going around still. So, that's here and there.
Yeah, but I'm losing, so I'm probably going to have to go now.
Okay. All right, sure. Anything else you want to plug? Anything else you want to share here before we let you run?
Yeah, just I've been getting a lot more followers on Twitter.
Yeah, I noticed a couple of new people that I didn't even know who the hell they were. I was like, who's this random guy messaging on Twitter? And he was one of your supporters, so that was nice to see.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of people, you know. I send, you know, I promote the show, as you know.
I appreciate that. I
send a lot of stuff out, and I'm really bummed that I'm fighting this cold, but forget it. I got to go. But anyway, I hope we could get one clip from this so I could send it out.
Yes,
and
we'll definitely do that. Now, I promise you, I tried my best to give as many clips as I can, so I definitely will make sure of that. And certainly, I hope that you feel better, and we'll definitely talk after the deadline. So I'll let you go, Mr. Moroska.
Okay.
And we'll
Thanks,
let you
guys. I'll catch you guys next week, and I'll talk to you during the week on Twitter.
All right, and that was Rob Moroska, and I'll come back to the baseball in a second, but I do want to bring this up because I want to go to the Brute Force because I saw the coach of the John Jay College women's Bloodhounds basketball team, Linda Day, and I want to bring it up now while I have a few minutes because we'll come back to the baseball and I'll have a few thoughts on the Orioles. But the Brute Force, I mean, New York Liberty, I mean, what a game there that we went to. I mean, certainly sometimes you never know with these games. You know, you never know what to expect, and you see in the Chicago Sky and Candace Parker and all these players, and I wanted to at least spend a few minutes on our experience at the Barclays Center and my first sporting event since COVID.
Yeah, I mean, it was an absolutely incredible game. And this is a perfect time for me because I've actually been working with him all week long. I'm ripping the Long Island Nets shirt because I've been working Long Island Nets camp all week, and that has been run by the great Wade Richardson. Wade Richardson, who got us and assisted us with getting tickets to
And
the
what
New York
seats,
Liberty.
by the way? I mean, these were seats people were asking me. They were like, wow. People were asking me and said, you didn't get us that good of seats when you had Islanders tickets at Barclays and you knew everybody. I said, well, that's the brute force. I mean, I didn't have the crowd I used to have.
Yeah, so I want to thank Wade for that, and we had a great week with the Long Island Nets camp. But right now, it's all about the New York Liberty. The New York Liberty, even though they haven't had the best of seasons record-wise, it's been a great season because you see the growth of the team. You see the young players starting to grow. And the game that we went to, I mean, a back-and-forth affair, but the Liberty,
I thought the Liberty were going to blow that game. I mean, you want to talk about me not being confident? I was watching. They had a 10-point lead at the start of the fourth quarter, and they wound up being down, I think, 2 or 3 with like 50 seconds left.
Well, considering the amount of missed layups they had early, considering the opponent in the Chicago Sky.
Tasha Howard missed like 20 layups.
Right. But, it was such an entertaining game, and thank you to Anthony Finkel, of course, for coming as well.
Rashid, his friend, also a standout at New Utrecht University High School there, a great player in Bensonhurst, yep.
But, I mean, it was just an entertaining game, and for me, I was expecting entertainment. I wasn't expecting the Liberty to win, to be honest with you. But
Mr. Confidence. Mr. Confidence.
To see both come together in what an entertaining game was incredible. I mean, we were up on our feet at the end of the game. Exciting. You see Enescu get that and 1 down 2. She hits the free throw.
She didn't have a good first half at all. She did not have a good first half.
She's been the superstar of this team all year. She's been an all-star. She's leading the league in triple doubles. I mean, she is just an incredible player, surrounded by some really nice young pieces. So I'm truthfully really excited.
Had some moments. We had the player that I cannot pronunciate her name. I mean, she was all over the place. The tall Asian woman. Yeah, I couldn't pronounce it. I'm glad you did it.
6'10", Chinese girl. She's another girl that you got to be excited about. I mean,
she's an energy player. I felt like I said to you and your father during the game, I felt like when she came in, that's when the game changed for the Liberty.
Absolutely, and even though the Liberty lost to Chicago tonight, I was expecting that as well. But you're looking at the team going forward. They're 10-18, but are only 2 games out of the playoffs. And starting now, Tom Bryce,
they have a homestand coming up in this week. Coming up here Tuesday and Wednesday at the Barclays Center.
The rest of the schedule has them playing the teams that they're competing against in the playoffs: Phoenix, the Wings, the Sparks. As well as the Dream. Those are all the teams that they're playing that are right in the picture with them to make the playoffs. So these are big games. The biggest game, coming up is going to be Sunday at the Barclays Center against Phoenix.
Yep.
So that's going to be big. But I personally think, and I know that I've been the women's basketball supporter here on this show. I've tried to talk the WNBA in the past, but going to the game and just seeing an entertaining game inspired me to want to talk more about this league because they truly deserve the coverage that they don't get. They don't get
professional basketball. Listen, trust me, it's professional basketball. Anthony Finkel was talking with me after the game, and his friend Rashid, like I said, who was a very, very good basketball player here in Brooklyn, and it was like we were talking about guys like really like these are professional athletes. This is not like you were watching like amateurs.
It's an incredible product. It's a different game. The women's game is different, but it's very fun to watch. I mean, we had a great time. It's one of the best events I've ever been to.
I had better times at that than I went to some Islander games with 3,000 people. I was telling the story to some of the guys that we were with, obviously Rashid and Anthony as examples, and I was at games where we had like 3,000 fans, 4,000 fans, and it was like 5-0 Dallas. We played, I think it was Montreal one year. They blew us out. I mean, I was talking about the Toronto games. I mean, I've seen some bad hockey games in Brooklyn. This was nothing like that. I mean, I've seen a lot of games at the Barclays Center, and this was one of my more favorite experiences, I must say.
Yeah, and it was an incredible game, but truthfully, an incredible product. I think the WNBA is only going to keep growing as they expand the league, as hopefully they get more sponsorships, and hopefully, as people had mentioned to me, the TV deals hopefully will change, and that'll help the league.
They got to get on CBS Sports Network. They got to get off CBS Sports Network. Nobody and their mother watches CBS Sports Network in the middle of the summer. I mean, they got to find a way to get to somewhere else. They have to.
But ultimately, between my family, Tom Bryce, Anthony Finkel, it was an incredible experience. I really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for coming. And ultimately, I'm really excited to see the stretch of this season for the Liberty. I think they still have a great chance to make the
Yeah, I
playoffs.
think they've got about 7 more games after tonight. I think it's 7 or 8 more games, and they've got a 3-game homestand coming up in Brooklyn. There's one more game toward the end of the season, so they're going to have to win these games here. So certainly we'll find out, and obviously, again, enjoyed the experience. Love meeting your family finally, and it was kind of funny before I get to John Gonzalez because he's got a comment back on the Castillo trade, and it was so funny because your father was like almost like reciting some of my comments about different things. So that was kind of always interesting when I meet people and they're like, "Oh, I heard you say this, I heard you say that," and obviously you have a wonderful family, and it was a pleasure and an honor to meet them as well as your mother, obviously your sister, who I'm sure was probably bored about the game because it didn't seem like she was too thrilled about the game. But look, each to its own. Everybody's different out there. Trust me, I understand. But let's come back to the baseball talk because I know people want to hear that. So John Gonzalez says, "Here are the deals. Here are the details on the Castillo trade. The Reds receive 4 prospects. Novelli Marte? Noelvi Marte, Edwin Arroyo, Andrew Moore, and Levi Stout. So after hearing that,
Dylan Moore.
Okay, so boy, John Gonzalez again. You got to come up with the names right because I could see it now coming. But some of the guys here. What's your thoughts on that? Is that too much?
I think that's a little bit of an overpay because that's 3 of their top 5 prospects.
Yes.
But like we said earlier, the Mariners are going for it. They haven't been in the playoffs in over 20 years.
A long time.
Throughout. So, listen, I would do it too if I'm Seattle. I'm going for it.
Yeah.
If you look at the American League, outside of a team.
I just rattled off the teams. I got to be honest. None of them impressed me other than the Yankees and Houston.
I think outside of even those teams, I mean, they're beatable teams, obviously. We're seeing them get beat all the time. So this is the year to go for it. Even in the National League, yeah, the Dodgers are the Dodgers, right? But they've only won 1 World Series.
That's amazing to me. That's a great point because you think about the last 9 years, 1 World Series.
I don't look at any team in the league that's unbeatable like
even Houston, the last 7 years, right? Only 1 World Series.
So that's why I think I like Seattle. I like aggressive teams. I have no problem with it, especially going into the playoffs. Especially a team that hasn't made the playoffs.
I'd like to see personally. I like to see him make it. I'm always a rooter for the underdog. I'm always a believer, and I like to see things different. I like the little guys to do well. So I'd like to see that franchise do well because it's a franchise that's been through a lot. So I'd like to see their fan base.
And they're the only team in baseball that's never been to a World Series.
Good point. They've been to 2 championship series.
Have, I think, 2 more years of team control on Castillo after this year.
Okay.
Going out on my computer.
I think 1.
No, 1 more.
1 more, I thought.
He's a free agent after 2023.
I thought 2024.
Let's check it here. Thanks. The crack staff is pulling it up. We'll see where we end up here with him. I think it looks like we got 2022. He's making $7.35 million, and he's earliest that he can be a free agent is 24. Arbitration eligible next year.
Yep.
Last year.
And John says that it's Andrew Moore. That's what he's saying.
I've seen
it's Dylan Moore.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna
I'll read more too on Twitter, so I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm going to pull it up here. Thanks to the crack staff for pulling this up here. Nope, Jeff Passett, I see nothing from him. I see that his Twitter is not updated.
Who did I see it from?
Don Heyman, I'm sure he had it, right? Did Heyman have it?
Yeah, probably.
And Heyman also points out, yep, he's got here Marte plus Moore, Arroyo, and Stout to Cincy for Castillo. Big haul for the Reds. He says Marte is a top prospect. Heyman also points out that Montas is now the Yankees' top starter target. So
here we go. This was Ken Rosenthal's tweet.
All right, let me go to Rosenthal here. Let's go to Rosenthal here. Thanks to the crack staff for pulling this up here. We got Dylan Moore. According to Ken Rosenthal, we got Dylan Moore. So there you go.
He tweeted a correction, though, that it is Andrew Moore.
Okay, so there you go. We got here live because I see it here, and now he says correction. It's Andrew Moore. So I tell you what, John Gonzalez, you got to give him some credit. You got to give John Gonzalez credit because John supports us. All right, very good. That's good to hear. We don't want to make our supporters any less happy than they already are. So certainly, I have many people that are unhappy with me, and John says he's vindicated, so he's happy here. So after hearing that, anybody else think that's too much or enough? I mean, for you, Bill, I see you kind of jumping in there. What do you think?
I think it's a little bit. I think it's a lot to give up for him, but I mean, like Chris and Justin said, at some point you have to make the playoffs. Certainly, you have this young core you want to build around, and you have Castillo at least another year, if not, I can't remember which deadline, whether it was 1 or 2 more years. I think, you make the move. Also, Robbie Ray, you never know when he's going to go back to walking everybody. So it gives you insurance if he all of a sudden loses command of his pitches again. I don't hate the move. I think it's a lot to give up. It discourages me as a Mets fan because I feel that this is really becoming a seller's market this year.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that follow-up question because I was going to say, does this set the precedent now for the market of the demand?
Yeah, I think it does.
For anybody else, does that kind of maybe almost deter you a little bit?
It's going to depend on the position, honestly. I think for the starting pitching market, I think that's where it's bad news for a team like the Yankees because now Frankie Montas is going to cost that much more. Even Jose Quintana might even cost just a little bit more than what we thought. The other market, whether it's a catcher, a designated hitter, a relief pitcher, we'll see how that ends up setting out. It could be a wholesome effect like Billy's talking about, but maybe not. It really depends on the demand, and the demand was clearly high. Rosenthal did tweet that the Rangers had interest, but it never really seemed like anybody other than the Mariners got past preliminary discussions for Castillo.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. I mean, you heard the Yankees, but you never really felt like it was serious. But I do think that there is a point to be made because obviously now this is the big shot. I mean, obviously Benintendi was kind of maybe your opening entree here, but now you've got between now and the deadline, what are we looking at, about 80 hours or so, give or take, 80-something hours between now and Tuesday's deadline. So,
yep.
I mean, for you, the Brew Force, do you think it maybe sets a precedent that now, like, let's say from the Mets standpoint, we've talked about the Yankees, but now going over to the Mets, and Billy and Justin talked about, do you think this now makes it where the Mets are going to have to give up a big haul if they want somebody of importance, whether it's a slugger, a reliever, or anybody else? I mean, what do you think?
I think I agree with Justin. It depends on the position. The Mets are not going for a starting pitcher, so as we talked about,
yeah, they don't need a starting pitcher.
This is going to affect the Yankees more than the Mets. I think the Mets, listen, regardless of whatever the market is, you're going to have to give up something if you want to get Contreras and Robertson from the Cubs, which we've all talked, has been out there.
Yep.
You have to give up something. If you're going to go for Mancini, first of all, to go back to what we were talking about earlier with the Orioles, I think they have a great chance to make the playoffs. And that actually might incentivize them not to get rid of Mancini. I think they really do. So, if I'm the Orioles, I'm considering, if the Mets don't give me enough, then I'm not going to get rid of him. But it depends on what the Mets are giving. And that right there might make the Orioles ask for more to see how much more they can get from the Mets, right? Because they're not a team that's out of a playoff push. But besides that, I don't think, like Justin said, the relief pitching market, there hasn't really been much, of big moves yet, so I don't think anything's been affected yet. But starting pitching, for sure, this is going to definitely take, and that is a huge, huge chunk of prospects to be in your top 5, 3 of them to give up. So, listen, honestly, if I'm the Yankees, if I'm Chris, I'm disappointed, but you're not giving up that many prospects for Luis Castillo. So, good luck for the Mariners, because if I'm a Yankee fan, I'm upset, but I'm not giving up that much for him.
It's so interesting on the Orioles, though, in that you look at their team, their starting rotation, it's not really impressive. Lineup's okay. I mean, it's not the greatest lineup, but it's respectable. And
you said it, Tom. You said it. The AL, there's nothing exciting in the American.
But that was my follow-up. I mean, is that you look at it and you look at this team before I let Chris come back in. I mean, why not them? I just look at this American League and, Toronto has been there and, okay, they're playing better now. Boston had a great run in the month of June. They have come down to earth.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay, it doesn't feel like their year. You've got the Central. I mean, those three teams are terrible. I mean, it would be an injustice, really, if one of them wins the division, but it's going to be. And then you got Seattle. I mean, Chris, you were going to jump in there, I saw.
Yeah, just real quick back to the trade. Seattle's 3 out of those guys were their top 5 picks, their first, third, and fifth prospects. Now, just for an example, the Yankees' first, third, and fifth prospects are Volpe, Dominguez, and Waldichuk. There was no way the Yankees were going to make that move. I think our prospects are probably a little higher than them. So,
right.
But that's just an example of how high they went to get Castillo. But with Baltimore to me is a dangerous team, right? Because they're just a bunch of young players.
Scrappy.
Right. And like whatever they do now, whatever they win is like a bonus for them. So if they get into the playoffs, I mean, they're a dangerous team because they're playing with house money. They were not even supposed to be probably 500 this year, let alone.
Oh, we had a what was it? Justin, you said the over under was what, 60?
60 and a half.
Yeah,
that's my point.
And this is a dangerous team, and guess what? They're just going to get better from here because now they got no money on their payroll really. So now they're going to try to spend money this offseason, signing a couple of pitchers. This is going to be a dangerous team. This American League East is going to be top to bottom.
Oh my God, the American League East! It's just right now. Technically, every team's over at 500 or better. I mean, even with the Red Sox struggle. And I have a few more comments in here from John Gonzalez. So he wants to chime in. Let's have him come in. He says, if the Mets pick up Joe Monteply and JD Martinez, then we can talk. He also jumps in here, Mr. Gonzalez. Chris, I would not trade Waldichuk, but he is the guy they all want.
For a pitcher, I would. For Montas, I would because Montas is a proven starter in the American League. Waldichuk, yeah, he's got a bunch of potential, but we don't know what he's going to do in the pros. The guy is not proven yet. At least Montas, he's done it already, and it's going to take more than just Waldichuk to get that deal done now. So, I mean, I'm okay with it, but I'm not giving up my first, third, and fifth prospect for Montas, that's for sure. So, and I think that's why the Yankees didn't get him because supposedly I forgot who wrote it. Supposedly they were close, but there's no way they're giving up that kind of prospect.
And Montas, thanks to the crack staff for giving us this here, 4-9 with a 3.18 ERA and 19 starts, just under 105 innings and 109 strikeouts. So having a very fantastic season. He's kind of the guy I think that was mentioned just under Luis Castillo. So excellent points here on that.
And to John's other comment about Joe Monteply and JD Martinez, Monteply would be a good pickup, but I would need more. Like I would need a David Robertson or another right-handed reliever because, like I said, the Mets need 2 relievers. And while I still would like the big bat to be at DH. My main focus right now is the bullpen because that bullpen is shaky. It's it's probably the only true part of this roster.
It's the Achilles heel.
Yeah, that I feel very concerned about. Other than that,
I don't think I can see.
I would like a big bat. I think they should. I still think they should get one. But do I feel decently about the lineup? Yeah, they're an okay lineup. Get a bat to make it much better, and then off we go. But they have to get 2. Forget one arm. They need 2 arms.
Yeah, there's no question. I can't take Seth Lugo much longer in these big spots. He's lost the last couple of months. And before I come back to baseball, I have been alerted, and I promised I would mention it for our friends over at Wrestling Championship Entertainment, that our guest on Wednesday, Craven Rage, retained the Universal Grand Slam Wisconsinite Championship. So congratulations, champ. We will bring you back on to talk about your championship win. I also want to congratulate Jack Bartley, who came on last night on Sportswire Radio. He is now the new CCW Underground Heavyweight Champion. He won his championship in Lampman Lockdown, so I congratulate the champ. We will bring him back on sometime next week to talk about his big wins. But let me go back to baseball for a second, and I want to come back to a team that I kind of mentioned briefly that I think maybe they have some bats now that maybe some teams would want. That's the San Francisco Giants. And the Giants obviously had what a season last year, and they've definitely come back to earth here quite a bit this year. And You look at a team, and they might have some parts, maybe some hitters. You look at a Jock Peterson. Obviously, we've talked about some other players. Brandon Bell comes to mind. I mean, there's other players. You think about Wilmer Flores. That's a name I've mentioned here a couple different times. But do you see anybody here? The San Francisco Giants might be now one of these teams that maybe could sell off a few parts that some teams might want. Anybody think differently or have a thought or two on that?
Yeah, I think that they're more I think they're confused. They got off to a pretty good start.
Mm-hmm.
They faded, and now they're kind of just not. They're just not good. I mean, they came out of the All-Star break, got swept 4 games by the LA Dodgers,
and the Diamondbacks took care of them too.
Yeah, the Diamondbacks did. Hey, look, the Diamondbacks are playing some solid baseball
They're a
right
tough
now.
team this year.
So,
They've played a lot better.
Hopefully, I know they lost tonight, but hopefully they keep it up against the Braves. But I don't know. The Giants are not that good. You could realistically see Rodon traded. Peterson, 1-year deal. So
He's got some value. 17 home runs, kind of had a nice year. I mean, that's a guy, somebody could use, frankly.
I know it might never happen because of the rivalry, but you know what I would love to see is with the Chris Taylor injury, Jock Peterson back to the Dodgers.
Don't give him any ideas. I'm telling you, don't give him any ideas. Dude, don't give him any ideas.
And to be fair, Gavin Lux has not been all that bad. Out in left field. I mean, the Dodgers are up and down the lineup. Just an absolute juggernaut. Which reminds me, I wanted to read off this one nugget that I found interesting because I brought up the Dodgers here. So I'm going to add one game to it because I'm going to now include tonight's game. Trey Turner has played 151 games as a Dodger. He has hitting streaks as a Dodger of 27 games, 26 games, 16 games, hit tonight 16 games, and 13 games. I mean,
what's his batting average? 320 as a Dodger, 322?
Trey Turner as a Dodger, I'll tell you right now, entering tonight was batting, 321.
What would they call that? The definition of a professional hitter. That's call it.
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing Jock Peterson back with the Dodgers. But in all seriousness, back to the Giants. I think it's time to realize that last year was a mirage. And it's clear that as good as San Diego is, as I'm watching Machado hit a 2-run home run for the Padres as they wear their Taco Bell uniforms against the Twins. But
well, one of our wrestling friends actually works at Taco Bell, so I want to refrain on any Taco Bell.
Okay, but I mean it's funny. As good as the Padres have gotten, they have not even made a dent in closing the gap on the Dodgers. They just haven't.
No, they're destined for a wild card. They're destined for
a
wild card here.
11.5 out.
And John says Peterson is on the IL. So DL.
We got hurt again. Okay.
Yeah,
that could change a lot.
And his numbers, just so you know, he has 17 home runs in 87 games, 252 at-bats, 492 slugging. So he's kind of had a really, really nice year there. So that's a guy that's, got some value there. I mean, that's certainly
concussion injured list.
The team that, could be certainly making some moves. I mean,
you know who else could move from that team? As much as, you don't want to do the storyline move. If the Mets want a DH to platoon with Vogelbach and hit lefties, Justin knows where I'm going.
I know exactly where you're going. And you know what?
And not this year, but Wilmer Flores could.
I brought him up a month ago. There was somebody on the fan, and they brought it up. They brought up the idea of Wilmer Flores coming back. Because you look at his numbers, and I was watching him last week. I think they played the Brewers, and he's still a relatively decent hitter. I mean,
he can step in against lefties at least, which the Mets need. He can kind of platoon that DH role with Vogelbach if you don't want to pay up for Martinez.
Got 14 home runs and 53 RBIs, by the way.
Billy, though, I gotta be the bearer of bad news, though. In 2022, he's batting .222 against lefties.
But he's got 14 home runs and 53 RBIs, and Met fans, I think like Billy said, they like the story. I mean, Brew Force, would you want Wilmer Flores back? I mean, Justin makes a good point. Billy makes a good point. I'm kind of in the middle here. Would you want him back?
Of course we want him back. I mean, how couldn't you want a guy back that obviously the last time he was here, we were in the World Series potentially. I mean, you'd want that back in the locker room, but again, at what cost? Better not be anything. Basically, you got to give up almost nothing to bring him back. So,
Yeah.
Listen, for me personally, first off, you're going to look at the Giants, for the Mets, for the bullpen. Look at them for bullpen help, because the Giants will give you a guy or two maybe that can help you in the bullpen. But I'm actually going to take a little bit from Billy and Justin and say I don't think the Giants should be selling a lot of their pieces. And the reason why, and Chris Pizzea knows where I'm going with this, is because they might have Aaron Judge next year. And I think that could potentially turn around the tides for the Giants. And the Giants, we all know, are kind of that team, at least of recent, that has a really good year, followed by an average year, followed by another really good year, followed by that's kind of who they are. Like that's what they've been. So, by adding Aaron Judge next year, which is very possible, that could totally turn them around again and make them another, 90-win team again, potentially. So I wouldn't sell off everything. If you're going to give up maybe one or two parts to get something back in return that'll help you for your future, okay. But honestly, they're maybe a piece or two away, I think, from competing. And even this year, they still have a chance at the wild card, even though they're out of it. You got to see. And I'm going to say this. I want to say this because this will make you guys laugh. All right? Even though, okay, I never talk good about this team at all, okay? But right now, the Philadelphia Phillies are a wild card team. And by the way, they haven't played so bad since Bryce Harper hasn't been in there, okay? No. So I think my case, I talked about Chris Pizzea, that they actually wouldn't play that bad without him, and they might be better off. I don't know. They're still a playoff team right now, and they're holding down the fort without him. So that's all I can say.
I think the stats since they changed managers, 32-18. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 32-18.
I think that's the biggest.
And I think Kyle Schwarber's had a big reason for that because he had 21 home runs in the last 2 months.
And Brad, I think they would more or less be inclined to sell off their expiring contracts. Like, John did bring up the fact that Peterson's on the IL. Yeah. It's a concussion, so who knows how long it's gonna. That's kind of tricky. I don't know if he might still be a movable piece, but they might only move expiring contracts so that money is there for Aaron Judge potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they would be a good team to bring up because I look at a lot of those players and I look at them and say, somebody might want to take them. They're veteran players. They've had some success. They might actually be a player that could come to a team like the Mets.
Fill a niche role for you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what the Mets, they might need that because realistically, we've been talking for a while about the Yankees. The Yankees have been pitching, right? But with the Mets, it's been offense. And the names Mancini, I'm almost convinced that Baltimore right now, I mean, they really can't sell people. I mean, now Boston, do you come back with Boston?
Again, I come back to Mancini as well as, a guy like Jock Peterson. This is a guy on an expiring contract. And I know that money is coming off the books for the Orioles to the point where they're going to spend some money, but I still feel like Mancini could be expendable without the looks of a fire sale because it's an expiring contract, and they just might want to capitalize on getting something for him.
It also depends on the deal. I think
there's also a benefit, I think, to telling the young kids they have, like, we're not going to necessarily add, but we're going to give you a shot to make a run at the playoffs. We're not going to move guys who are, useful players. I think there's a value in that, with Mancini. So it's kind of, do you get enough back where you can, because you're also not worried about this year with that. You're about, next year the players going to season. Does ownership really believe in us, or are they going to sell expiring players even if we're in the playoff hunt? it's a kind of a dangerous precedent to set.
Weird message. Yeah,
You don't
I
want to
agree.
do what years ago that famously, and Chris will remember this, what the Chicago White Sox did. It was the famous wave the white flag, where in 1997 they were 3.5 games out of first place, and they started moving players. And all of a sudden, the fan base got up in arms because the year before they acquired Albert Bell. They spent a lot of money, and they had a team. Roberto Hernandez was their closer. They famously traded him and a few other players, and it was the famous wave the white flag. And they were only 3.5 games out of first place. So there is a point that Billy makes, whether you're a player in that clubhouse or whether you're a fan. Baltimore right now is in a spot where they could make the postseason. So maybe you do what Justin does and kind of stand pat, maybe make the move with Mancini. But going back to it, then I guess then if you're the Mets, I mean, is Josh Bell? Do we go back to Josh Bell? I mean, I know I got the Yankee side of things, but is Josh Bell? You don't want him, Brad? I see you shaking your head. Why not?
It's not that I don't want him. Of course, we want him.
I was watching him against the Dodgers because I had the game on a few days ago, and he looked like he could be fitting in our lineup pretty nicely.
You want
Yeah,
him.
but of course we want him on the team. But first of all, we're trading with the Nationals. We know the Nationals are going to want us to overpay if they're going to take
Right.
if they give us one of their players. Okay, and listen, the other thing is, besides Josh Bell only plays first base and he DHs. So I know he's a switch hitter, and I know he has a lot of assets, but for the price that we would probably have to give up, and I don't know how many more spots we got for this guy right now. Considering that I think a better alternative is a guy like JD Martinez to pair with Vogelbach rather than going there, right, which is going to cost much more, right? And again, yeah, Josh Bell's a nice player, but the overall history of Josh Bell, at least of recent, is not great until this season. So I'm not that sold on Josh Bell, and I'm worried about the Mets trading with the Nationals, that the Nationals will want too much, and the Mets cannot give too much for Josh Bell. He's not the answer, right? We could still get a Martinez or a Mancini who
Martinez, I think Met fans would be happy with because he's a name that people know. He's had proven success, although this year he's not having the year that he's had in years past. I mean, he was an all-star, but the numbers are nowhere near what we saw in years past. But I think he would be a name that Mets fans would take because back of the baseball card says he's a guy that would come in here and produce. Although, like I said, not having the year that he normally would have, maybe that's why you are able to go away with giving a little less.
And until last night, I was backing off on this JD Martinez notion because, I wanted somebody who could DH but have some positional versatility. Now that the Mets have acquired Tyler Naquin to be that fourth outfielder, you have that now probably new platoon situation with Guillorme and Escobar at third base, McNeil primarily at second. You could get a strict DH like a JD Martinez and, have him, mash lefties because the Mets are awful against left-handed pitching.
That stuff's going to catch up to you. I got a couple comments in here first. Rob Maraska, thanks everybody for having him on. He said he was a little under the weather and he couldn't keep going, so that's okay. And John Gonzalez has an interesting name because he's only been in the big leagues for a short while, and he says an intriguing pitcher on the market is Tariq Skubal of the Tigers and a solid left-hander. Yeah, he's having a nice year. I mean, you think
everybody, if you're on the Tigers roster, everybody's available.
And that guy has got like 4 years of control still left. He's a young pitcher.
Well, if you're Detroit, you move him, though. If you have him under control and you're paying nothing for him for 4 years, that's what I don't get.
It makes no, but we're talking about the Tigers.
Right? True. We're talking about Detroit. Now, that goes back to
that's exactly what I was going to say. John Gonzalez cannot help himself but bring up Detroit on the show. I mean, this guy every time.
Well, football's starting up. Apparently, I was listening to the Liftoff Jets with Sharman and Chris. And by the way, listen to them anytime on sportnarium.com/player. Anthony Finkel was telling me the other day that he listened to the show last week. And the Hall of Fame game is next weekend. So to be fair, football's not too far away, my friend. We're going to be talking a lot of football here very soon on Sportswire. I mean, Yankees and Mets are giving us some things to talk about. But, you can't blame John Gonzalez for that.
Oh, no. Don't worry. I'm extremely excited for some football. That's going to be exciting. The upset alert is going to be back up top.
Now, I'm looking forward to talking football. I got to be honest. I mean, I know I got Randy Dillon on a few minutes for wrestling, but I'm not looking forward to talking hockey in August. I got to be honest. I love hockey, but, as an Islanders fan,
There's
really
nothing going on in August with hockey.
Right. I mean, listen, baseball is great, but I don't want to do 3 hours straight of baseball. So I'm looking forward to some football.
Actually, talking about football, though, we were talking about, the AL and, kind of the wild card not being that impressive. You know what it reminds me of is last fall and winter talking about, the 7th seed of the AFC playoffs.
The whole thing with the Steelers, and you had the Chargers and the Raiders. And, that was wild, man. That was kind of fun.
The AL's the same this year. It's like, the Orioles, the Red Sox.
Dude, the American League, like these teams, it's like, my God, the parity after the Yankees and Astros, it's like, it drops like a rock. In the National League, at least you got like 3 or 4 good teams, maybe 5. But the American League, to me, it's 2 horses. And the rest of these teams, I mean, Minnesota, Cleveland, Chicago, Seattle, Toronto, Tampa, Boston, Baltimore. I mean, it's almost like flip a coin. Whoever comes off and
I mean, there's literally 2 teams that are – it's either the Astros or the Yankees basically coming out of the American League. And you could take your pick of any one of 5 teams right now to come out of the National League.
I got the Dodgers, I got the Mets, the Braves, and San Diego, I would say probably, and then everybody else drops off, I think, after that.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
You can maybe throw the Cardinals in there if Arenado and Goldschmidt get hot.
If the Cardinals get Soto, I'm definitely moving the Cardinals in there. If the Cardinals find a way to get Soto, I'm putting the Cardinals in right there with everybody. I will say that much. I mean, I would put them over San Diego, frankly.
Probably.
The Brewers, you can't totally rule out with their.
I was going to mention Milwaukee, potentially.
Another team with the lineup, though, that's really like they got good pitching, though. They got good pitching.
Well,
but they're another team, though, that always gets to the postseason these last 4 or 5 years and never does nothing.
Let's see what they do with the deadline, though. That'll be interesting.
And good point. That's a great point. And then also, was it Justin that posted Joe Musgrove 5 years, $100 million with San Diego re-signing or near re-signing? Was that what I read in the Sportswire group on Twitter?
Yeah, I think it's close. I don't think it's done yet.
Yeah.
Well, as long as those starts aren't against the Mets, I'll be happy. Although Sunday, the Mets were able to interesting week for the Mets because Musgrove and Alcantara, the Mets, I guess to the Brewfort's point, I guess to your point, Mr. Brewforce, I mean, the Mets actually did wind up doing okay against 2 of the better pitchers in baseball. So maybe you might be onto something there. And John Gonzalez.
There's no shame in getting shut down by good pitching. That's that was the sentiment I had last night when the Mets got shut last Friday when the Mets got shut down by Darvish. It's going to happen. And that's what I looked at tonight. I was like, hoping the Mets could maybe squeak out a low-scoring win, and they were able to put up.
They had their chances against Alcantara. I got to be honest; they had their chances against him. It was 4 runs, but they could have easily had a couple more runs. I mean, Mark Canha had twice runners in the scoring position and couldn't get the job done. I mean, so they had their moments here. And John Gonzalez says Lions versus Steelers soon, very soon. Yes, definitely very soon for sure here. And we look forward to streaming the game here on Sportswire Radio. So certainly hope your voice will be ready for that, Mr. Brewforce, because I know tonight it's getting tough there, I know. So we'll
it's been a lot of coaching this week, so yeah.
I can hear in your voice. Well, you were telling me last week that you were going to have a lot of coaching. So I can sympathize because I was on 3 jury cases today, online jury duty. I had 3 cases I was on, so I could certainly sympathize with that. So I feel your pain on that. So we are here on Sportswire Radio, and we're joined by Randy Dillon, and Randy hosts the Hockey Fan Chat. And Randy, how you doing there?
I'm good, fellas. How are we doing tonight?
Hanging in there. Obviously, speaking a lot about baseball, kind of touching upon very briefly the football season and such. And
I saw the big trade with the Mariners just recently. I don't know if you guys were able to touch on that quickly or not.
We did. Yeah. We did actually spend a lot of time on that. We actually, which is great because one of the things I always say, Randy, is when you're on is you always hope to get a good story. When I was doing it as a podcast, you say, well, now the show's over. We can't go back and talk about it. But now, when you're live and you get all this stuff, you can do that. And we got a good that. And then John Gonzalez, before I get to you, Randy, says the one name being tied to the Brewers is Ramon Laureano. Yeah, I think I did hear that somewhere.
Outfielder, yeah, get themselves a center fielder. That would help for sure.
I kind of feel like the Brewers, it's all about that lineup. To me, in order for that team, and I think I touched upon it, the last 3 or 4 years, they've been in the postseason, and they haven't been able to get deep. And I kind of feel like I don't know where they are right now in terms of can they get over, because some of the teams we spoke about in the National League, I mean, the Dodgers are the Dodgers. Despite what the Brew Force may say, the Braves are the defending world champions. And you got the Mets, and no question the Mets are there. And you got San Diego lurking. So, I mean, and who knows about St. Louis? And St. Louis and Milwaukee are locked in a dogfight. And I think it's important for one of those teams to win the division. And Laureano could be a guy that, maybe you take and get some value off. But that's a good point. And John Gonzalez wants to remind you that you are the Macho Man, Randy Dillon. Now, normally I would be able to do the dig it and snap it into a Slim Jim, but I don't know how much I have left in the voice. But I did want to spend a few minutes on it because we've talked a lot about baseball. We'll get the guys' closing thoughts in a little while also. But SummerSlam, and is it to be or not to be with Brock Lesnar? I got to ask you very quickly on that.
I don't think it's going to be with Brock Lesnar. I think for him, it's more going to be with the whole change of Vince McMahon no longer there. The rumors last week saying that he was walking when Vince retired. I think the thing is he's just going to get through SummerSlam, and either he's going to walk in the sunset or he's going to do his thing where we're not going to see him until Survivor Series or Royal Rumble next year.
Now, part of me feels like if he's not going to be there at SummerSlam, what's the point altogether? Because to me, this was all about Roman Reigns. I got to be honest. Before I go back to the other guys in a second, but this was all about Roman Reigns. This was all about that championship, and that was SummerSlam is arguably now the second biggest show of the year. I think it's bigger than the Royal Rumble now. I mean, so to me, it was all about that. So if it's not Brock Lesnar, who is it then?
I think my opinion is going to be what's going to happen at SummerSlam. Theory's going to cash in the briefcase, but he's going to split the titles. He's going to ununify them. Roman Reigns going to take the Universal to Cardiff, and I think he's going to drop back to McIntyre because the speculation is he's in a movie, he's going to take time off, all that kind of stuff. And
who is that, by the way? Because I try not to read the dirt sheets as somebody who
this is my theory. This is my theory.
Oh, okay.
Theory's going to cash in the briefcase. He's going to split the titles, take the WWE title back to Raw with him. Roman Reigns keep the Universal title. Then I think Drew McIntyre is going to beat him at Cardiff, Roman Reigns to win the.
Well, McIntyre's due because McIntyre lost the title and he held it during COVID, a very tough time, and never really got a shot back at it. So that makes sense. Theory, I don't see him beating Bobby Lashley tomorrow. I could see him in kind of the Miz setup there, winning something there. So I could definitely see that. As for Reigns, I would like to see maybe something different there. So that would make sense. Anything else I should watch in SummerSlam? Anything else of note before I bring
the one thing the match I'm actually really looking forward to watching at SummerSlam is Pat McAfee versus Baron Corbin.
That's the match you're looking forward to most?
I'm looking forward, other than the Roman Reigns and Lesnar match, because I think these guys can really put on a show with last man standing match. McAfee.
I have to be home in time because I actually am going to a wrestling show myself tomorrow. I'm hoping that I'm home in time.
Yeah. McAfee has shown he can compete with the best. We saw it in NXT TakeOver. He put Adam Cole. WrestleMania with Theory. That was actually pretty impressive as well. Baron Corbin has shown he's a pro. I think this match is going to be an under-the-radar match and possibly have the potential.
I was kind of going along the lines of Bianca and Becky because I would like to see them again. So I hear you on that. And what do you think about Ronda Rousey and Liv Morgan?
This is interesting with Ronda Rousey because I think she's going to take some time off. But I don't know if it's going to be she's going to get attacked from behind from Charlotte or someone else, or Liv going to beat her dirty, or she's going to take a full heel turn. Because I feel not many people remember Becky Lynch, the only one who actually pinned Ronda Rousey next to Liv Morgan cashing in. No one has really pinned Ronda Rousey in a one-on-one match.
Well, it's the same quandary you faced, right? But it's the same quandary you faced with Brock Lesnar. How do you beat somebody that's in real life immovable?
Exactly. So that's why I think I was surprised this wasn't a triple threat match. So I'm surprised to see what's going to happen with that. But I expect Liv Morgan to keep the title.
Okay, so you don't think anything, before I move on, you don't think that there's anything else of note? You don't see any changes, anybody else returning? I mean, there's a speculation in the Rey Mysterio match with his son that there could be somebody returning. Anything else of note?
The speculation I'm hearing is there's talk with Seth Rollins. Obviously, the match with Riddle got canceled.
Right, because Riddle got injured.
They're going to bring the big coup I'm looking for is Johnny Gargano to surprise everyone at SummerSlam because he stepped away because he knew he wasn't going to get anything in Vince McMahon's WWE. Triple H is now running, and he got everything when he was when he was running NXT. So this will be interesting. Is it just a one-off with Seth Rollins? Because we saw his frustration. He pointed out on social media saying he was looking forward to Triple H says, I'm hearing you. So I expect there to be some type of match with Seth Rollins. Either hopefully Johnny Gargano or someone.
I'd like to see Bray Wyatt, but I know it's not happening. For whatever reason.
Bray Wyatt is going to be a while away. I think they're going to
if he comes back. Well, as long as it's not Goldberg. As long as I don't see Goldberg again.
No one wants to see Goldberg at this point.
I want to see him on the A&E documentaries, but I don't know if I want to see him back.
I think his runs are done. I think we've seen enough of it.
I don't know if you saw the A&E documentary. I enjoyed that, but I don't know if I want to see him again in a match. I think at this point it's time. And Ric Flair, you think Ric Flair wins his match here coming up Sunday?
I just don't hope he has a dang heart attack in the ring. I don't care.
All right, fair enough. That's a good point.
My hope with Flair. Just don't have a heart attack in the ring.
All right, that's a good point here. And we are on Sportswire Radio, speaking all things related to the world of sports and much, much more with the gang. That is Randy Dillon of the Hockey Fan Chat, Chris Bizzea of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter, Billy McInerney, formerly of Lead Sports. And are you still with the Lead Sports? It's been a while. Do you still write with the Lead Sports at all or anything else like that?
No, I'm not writing at all right now, actually.
No, okay. You still keep in touch with Rob Sabo? Robbie was a good guy. Robbie was always good to us here.
Yeah. He's sold Elite Sports. Actually, he's
wow.
He's with Jet X Factor now.
You know what? I wish I would have known because I would have probably liked to have purchased it because I was actually in the. I should probably say it on air here before we move on. I was in the running to purchase a streaming provider actually, and unfortunately it didn't work out for reasons I'm not going to get into here, but I was actually in the running for something, and it didn't work out. That would have been a great thing. And John Gonzalez has a message for you, the Brute Force, and I'm going to come back to you. And he says here, I want to see the Brute Force wrestling games going. First of all, would you take that challenge? And secondly, would you like to respond to that challenge?
Would I take that challenge 100%? Do you think I'm scared of him? I mean, absolutely not.
You have confidence, right? You got confidence?
Oh, yeah. You want me to put it up there for you? I'll put it up there for you. Of course I have confidence. I mean, listen, of course I would want to save New York City, the NBA, the world, the Mecca of basketball, all right, and wrestle James Dolan for the New York Knicks, all right, and get him the hell out. I would do it. Of course I would. But ultimately, the man is doesn't like people. He doesn't want to talk to people. All right, and he certainly don't want to wrestle no one. I would definitely take his you-know-what down. I would take him down and make him pay for all these 20 damn years of my life that he's made miserable.
We tell him that the Donovan Mitchell trade talks have stalled.
Well, the Brute Force wasn't crazy about Donovan Mitchell. We were on the air, was it 2 weeks ago? We spoke about Donovan Mitchell, and you really weren't for it. I was actually trying to, give you the lead-in to say, yeah, it's a good move, and you never were crazy about Donovan Mitchell. To your credit, I guess, or defense. You never.
Let me take confidence back off. Yeah. That's why I took confidence off the board now because that's not going to make me confident that the New York Knicks are going to do anything more. All right, then just maybe get to the playoffs and win a playing game. Woohoo! Big deal. So James Dillon, listen, if you want to wrestle the Brute Force, I have the nickname for a reason, and you do not want to mess with me. That's it.
But I feel like still real quick on it because anytime I talk to Knicks, I know people want to hear it on social media, and I know Anthony Finkel will talk about it on the way to Queens and on the way home to Staten Island and Brooklyn. I know he'll talk about it. But I mean, Knicks fans will take a play-in game and a play-in victory at this point because you just brought it up. It's 20 plus years of nothing. I mean, a lot of Knicks fans would be very satisfied with Donovan Mitchell and win a postseason series, if that. They would take that and probably throw a Tinker Tape parade. You know that.
Yeah, I know that, but there's also a lot of New York Knicks fans, especially myself, right? A lot of people, we've talked on this show, right? I mean, come on, John. What do you want me to? You want me to lose my voice on this show Did you
I
hear
blame
what-
Anthony Finkel. I blame Anthony Finkel because Anthony Finkel yesterday posted on the Sports Authorities group the Julius Randle picture, and I actually chimed in and said a New York sports legend. So I have to say I'm an inhibitor of this.
Oh, God. I mean, listen, you know what? For me, as a Knicks fan that's basically never seen this team succeed, getting into playoffs, we're not, we talked about the Seattle Mariners earlier. Getting into playoffs is their goal. I'm sick of hearing, all right, maybe we'll get into. We haven't won nothing since 1973.
That's true. You know what?
1973.
You know what's funny? I was a little kid in 1994, and I remember even hearing in 1994, because I must have been maybe like in kindergarten or the first grade. I forget what grade I was in. And I remember even hearing then the Knicks hadn't won a championship since 1973. And that was almost 30 years ago. So if you do the math, I mean, it's 50 years. I mean, it's like, it's embarrassing. It's
I am supposed to be satisfied with them winning a freaking playing game, which really isn't even a play-off game. It's a play-in game to get in the playoffs, all right? And they might not even get past that. And if they do get in it, then they're probably going to play one of the best teams and just get slapped. Well,
I got a great one. Listen, you know what? I think the entire team is going to laugh at this one because John Gonzalez hit a home run out of the park here. He says Rob Maraska was in pre-K the last time the Knicks were good. No, Rob Maraska, honestly, was probably like in junior high the last time the Knicks were good. Probably like that's when they won the championship. That was probably like him and Bobby Tats. Bobby Tats was probably like 35 when the Knicks won the championship, and Rob Maraska was probably like, no, seriously, like Bobby Tats. Like I love Bobby Tats in the Yankees, but like he sounds like he's like 85 years old on his podcast. I love the Pinstripe Chronicles, everything they do, but he says bro and yo like every time on a podcast, and he sounds like he's like 85. So I love Bobby. Bobby, I love you, bro. You do great for us, but you sound old. And Rob Maraska, he's pretty much right there. I mean, so yeah, Rob Maraska he probably remembers where he was, what he had for dinner, what he was wearing, where he was when the last time the Knicks were good. So yeah, I agree with you, John Gonzalez. But what I'm curious, John Gonzalez, what would that make you? So when the Knicks were good, how old were you? May I ask? Am I opening up a keg of worms here by asking when how old John Gonzalez was when the Knicks were good? Am I allowed to ask that, or maybe I should?
When they were good, 94, 99.
I mean, listen. Well, all kidding aside, the Knicks were good in the 90s. I mean, the Knicks were very good, and he says no comment, by the way. So he knew that I was kind of poking the tiger there for you, Brad. But the Knicks were good in the 90s. There's no question that the Knicks in the 90s were very good. I mean, we're talking about winning a championship, though. It was 1973, as Brad pointed out, and they went to the finals in 94 and 99. I remember that, but I mean, but they haven't been since 2000. They went to the conference finals. They haven't been any good. In fact, the Brew Force, just for you, before I come back to the guys, Anthony Finkel posted this on the Sports Authorities group, and he posted a picture of Latrell Sprewell. That was the last time the Knicks were really good. Latrell Sprewell was in a Knicks uniform, and that was kind of funny, and I had a funny comment for that. So, yeah, that was I
will say one last thing before I move on from this topic.
Yeah, move on, because I want to get final thoughts from the guys.
I'll just say this right now, because we mentioned them in the middle of the show. There's going to be a team from New York that plays basketball that's going to win a championship before the Knicks, and that's the New York Liberty. Just to put that down right now. The New York Liberty will win a championship. You want to go on the record? So you want to go on the record? All right. Okay? Because at least they have something that we're excited about. They have a superstar. They have players. So they will get it done before the Knicks. And at this point, I was talking to my friends years ago about 2030. It might be 2040. Let's put it back into the 10 years before we see the Knicks maybe win more than one playoff series.
Bro,
yeah, I think that's a possibility.
Do you think the Knicks will ever win with James Dolan, or until James Dolan goes, the Knicks are doomed?
No. They will never get past the first round, no further than the second round under James Dolan. They did it once.
Would you like to become a Detroit Pistons fan?
Listen, you know what, John? John, I know you're doing your job. I know you're doing the job of endorsing Detroit. All right, you're the biggest Detroit fan I've met. Okay, but ultimately, that's not the team that I'm going to change teams from the Knicks to the Pistons. All right, there's got to be a better team out there. But
Well,
again,
they got a history. Whoa. Before I move on, they do have a history in the fact they've won a couple of championships. They've been to the finals. They had a stretch of numerous conference finals appearances up until recently. They have a respectable franchise. I mean, they've had a lot of success. I mean, let's not they're not the Lions. The Pistons have had a lot of success, by the way. I wouldn't put them down.
no, they've had success more than the Knicks, at least from
They
what I
have.
know.
Undeniably.
So, since I was born in 1997, they've had more success than the Knicks. Anyone has. Anyone. I've had more success.
Going back to
than the Knicks.
1973, the Pistons have had. I mean, they've been a good franchise. I mean, I know they've had some really weird runs, but they have had a lot of success. I wouldn't knock the Pistons.
But listen, I've already said on this show when we were in the Knicks season, during basketball season, that I was contemplating changing teams, but ultimately I can't do it. I'm just loyal to this garbage franchise that I root for. That's what I
tell you what, people love it on Sportzwire Radio because if I post a clip on Twitter or Instagram, I get hundreds of views. I get people that talk about it. So the garbage sells. I mean, listen,
John, I mean, Brad, you sound like a Leaf fan right now, saying you cheer for them no matter how bad.
They haven't won since 1967. So I mean,
Yeah,
Leaf fans and Knicks fans, and the Leafs haven't been to the second round since 2004. I mean, Leaf fans have it tougher than the Knicks.
That's embarrassing.
2004 was the last time the Toronto Maple Leafs won a postseason series. Think about that. 2004. And that's an original six franchise.
I will say that's pretty bad. And considering that Randy knows this, that in Canada hockey's a big thing. But listen, I live in New York. I'm a New Yorker, and basketball is supposed to be associated with New York City, and we suck every year. We stink. We're a horrible example of basketball every damn year for my whole life. So what kind of mecca basketball have I been told about? It's horrible. I'm done.
All right, you're done. And John Gonzalez wants to remind you, easy on the Lions. And so
I complimented the Lions. I think they're going to win 6 or 7 games this year.
All right. So if that's a compliment, but he certainly made his case clear that Detroit sports is not so bad. And I would remind you before we move on, the Pistons do, again, as a franchise, they've had some respectable runs. So, and John says nothing better than the brute being the brute. Yeah, what was the famous line, Manny being Manny all those years? Like the brute force being the brute force almost. Or Latrell Sprewell. When Latrell Sprewell was the Knicks, it was always kind of like Latrell Sprewell being Latrell because you never knew if he'd speak to the media, he'd have his dreads on, or he was always that kind of player, like an enigma. And that's the brute force there in that. But let me get to the guys, and I'll get to one thought on Randy on wrestling before we move on tonight. So let me go to Chris first, and then I'm going to go to everybody on a final thought, except for Randy, because I'll ask Randy a different thought to SummerSlam tomorrow night. But let me go with you, Chris. Between now and Tuesday, what do you think the Yankees ultimately wind up doing? Final thought on that for the trade deadline.
I think they definitely add a pitcher. I'm hoping it's a guy like Montas, but I'm leaning towards maybe somebody a lot lower like Quintana, but maybe somebody in between. I think they're still going to get somebody that we haven't heard of yet. A name that hasn't been talked about. Cashman always gets that done for some reason. So that's my prediction. They're going to pick up somebody or more than one person that we haven't been talking about.
And I'll tell you what, you might not be wrong because I was watching the Jeter special last night in Duffy's with Anthony Finkel, and they were talking about the A-Rod trade. And what did Theo Epstein said? The Yankees always make those moves. They always find a way. So to your point, just like Theo Epstein admitted, the Yankees always find a way to make those moves. So I couldn't agree with you more. So, Justin, between now and Tuesday, what do you think ultimately the Mets wind up doing?
I think they're going to come with a couple of bullpen arms first and foremost, and then I think they're going to end up with either Wilson Contreras or JD Martinez.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we wind up getting both, I'll definitely be singing the Brute Force's praises and confidence. If we get one, we'll see. But if we find a way to get Martinez and Contreras, the Brute Force, you were right all along.
Hold on. Are you telling me if that happens, you'll sing Demi Lovato on this show next week? You'll sing "What's Wrong with Being Confident" on the show. Is that what you're trying to say?
I won't sing confidence, but I can guarantee you that I sing as the intro it does the number one, and we're here. I do that. That's better than singing. That's better than singing. You know what?
That's true.
That brings us fans on Sportswire. That brings us listeners. So that's what pays the bills on Sportswire. Those intros, I get told all the time from professional wrestlers and other people that because, in fact, I should even announce it here before I go to Billy. We have on a world champion women's boxer. Speaking about women's, you talk about women's basketball. We're doing women's boxing again in 2 weeks. We have Shannon O'Connell, and she's fighting Ebony Bridges. And if you're a hot-blooded male, you look up Ebony Bridges, you'll see why. But Shannon O'Connell is going to make sure that Ebony Bridges, she won't look the way she looks anymore. But Shannon O'Connell, speaking about that, that's why we get those big interviews. So we thank those intros. But yes, I'll be confident, though. I'll promise you we'll be confident. But we'll stay tuned. We have a long time between now and Tuesday. They say in politics, 15 minutes is a lifetime. Between now and the trade deadline, that's like 30 lifetimes. So we'll see. But yeah, if we get Contreras and Martinez, all in for it. But we'll see. Stay tuned. Billy, between now and the deadline for the Mets, what do you think they ultimately wind up doing?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna agree with Justin a little bit. I think they end up making a big move, getting Contreras and Robertson in the same trade. I don't know what would give up for them, but I certainly think that might be an option. I think they add 2 relievers on top of that. Honestly, I could see another high leverage reliever and maybe like a Daniel Bard kind of guy that's a little more.
I've heard his name thrown around, Daniel Bard.
So I can see I think they end up coming away with 3 relievers, 2 of which are like late inning guys you throw in there to get you to Diaz, and then one is
kind of like your Turk Wendell, Dennis Cook, Pedro Feliciano types. Those are the guys that you really need in order to get to where you need to be.
Yeah, so I think you end up seeing 3 relievers and Wilson Contreras.
All right, well, we'll certainly see. I think that's all great stuff there. And I have S&Y on the background and the Brute Force I had to mention because we didn't mention it. Who are we sitting near? Maria Marino, by the way, Saturday.
That's right.
We're sitting next by Maria Marino. And I think we were kind of debating, should we go over? And I was like, no, I'll do it. But then we kind of like saw that she went the other way, and it was kind of like, didn't seem like she really wanted to be bothered. But, I would have asked for a phone number. I would have did it right in front of you, but didn't work out. But hey, that's here nor there. But I'll come back to the Brute Force in a second. But Randy, give me between now and tomorrow night, what are 2 things that you're watching closely when it comes to SummerSlam?
The 2 things I'm looking for at SummerSlam. The first, Logan Paul, how he's going to perform in a one-on-one match at WrestleMania. He was tag teaming with the Miz. The Miz is probably one of the top guys right now, but he's in a one-on-one match. So
I think he is. I don't think he gets the credit because to me he's in the Chris Jericho spot that he was in.
Yeah, no, exactly. Years. So if for Logan Paul to have a great match tomorrow, the Miz will definitely carry him. The other thing I'm looking at SummerSlam is, the other thing to look for. Like I know earlier, I was saying Corbin versus McAfee could steal the night, but the match that definitely going to steal the night, that should be getting a lot of time. The tag team, the Usos, Street Profit with Double J refereeing, that match is going to be.
I think, how about Double Duty, Double J, Jeff Jarrett? He's going to be a referee tomorrow night. And then Sunday, he's wrestling in Ric Flair's last match. I mean, you want to talk about double duty. Jeff Jarrett, I mean, certainly. And hell has to have frozen over, Randy, because if you would have asked me 5 years ago that Jeff Jarrett would be a WWE employee and a referee, I would have said, Randy, what are you smoking?
Well, and Vince McMahon's not there at the same time. I think that's the other thing.
So Jeff Jarrett knew what he was doing after all. The old Jarretts, they had the tricks. The Jarretts, listen, they knew something that we didn't do. Listen, boy, what a master politician Jeff Jarrett is.
Oh, absolutely. I watched the documentary with Stone Cold, and just watching that, phenomenal, the work.
I always felt that Jeff Jarrett never got the recognition.
Oh, 100%.
They looked at him and said, well, he was Intercontinental Champion when nobody was around. But I look at he was the first 6-time Intercontinental Champion. He was a world champion in WCW. He was a 4 Horsemen member for a brief period. He tag teamed with Owen Hart. I mean, TNA, look at everything. AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, Frankie Kazarian, all this, and you see everybody from TNA that's influenced by WWE. I mean, Jeff Jarrett, to me, never got the recognition that he's got.
And I think the big thing is what he did with China, how he put put her over to another level. I think a lot of people looked at that as a dismissal.
That was the kind of the foreshadowing of women's wrestling.
Exactly, like that. He played a huge role in that part right there. Like I think I think at the time people discouraged it, saying he was getting the bat in the stick, but no, he did a phenomenal job there. So definitely,
I think listen, Jeff Jarrett, I was always a fan of. I never liked the idea. Oh, Jeff Jarrett, he's a vanilla wrestler, and he's he's a generic. And no, listen, the guys had a lot, and he still looked great. By the way, I mean, he looks phenomenal. I mean, so great stuff there, Randy. Excited to have some wrestling in there. And the Brute Force between now and Tuesday. I know we spoke about it with the Mets, with some of the other guys. We mentioned the names. I mean, you're Mr. Confidence. They should be calling you the Confidence. I don't know how you call it. The confidence brute force. I don't know how we have to figure out how to work that name in there, for whatever it might be. But what do the Mets do, in your opinion, between now and Tuesday?
Yeah, I'm in line with Justin and Billy on Wilson Contreras and Robertson. I think they get it done. I think they make a deal. I will say who I believe the centerpiece will be in that trade. It's going to be Ronnie Mauricio. I think Ronnie Mauricio is going to be the centerpiece of that trade. I could also see potentially J.D. Davis in that trade as well.
Good. J.D. Davis. Nice knowing you, J.D. Davis.
And a couple other pieces. I think that Ronnie Mauricio, though, will be the selling factor in that trade for the Cubs. And then I'm actually going to be confident, Tom Bryce, because I think that the Mets are also going to get J.D. Martinez. I think they're going to get Martinez.
I think that's a good one. I think
I will say also, even though this is not the best option, I will say they need a left-handed reliever. I could see them getting Jake Diekman in the trade also. I think they could potentially get a Jake Diekman. Not great, but okay. A guy who they could take in the deal. And the Red Sox, even last year and this year, have religiously talked about two names they like: Dominic Smith and Mark Vientos. Those are two guys that they've said that they like. I could see both of them going potentially in that deal.
I'll tell you what, Dominic Smith, I know Ernest Dove loves him, and he saw him when he was basically putting his uniform on in the locker room or the back in St. Lucie, but they can take him. It'd be tough to give up Vientos, but Martinez is the kind of guy that the Mets right now are in a position, I think, to get very deep into the postseason with the pitching. If DeGrom is healthy with Scherzer in a short series or a 7-game series, to have those guys up for 2 times, you could get to the World Series. You make the move. You got to do it. You got to make that move. We did it in 2015. Michael Fulmer, we got Cespedes. So to me, if you're in that position, I think you do it. So I think all that stuff there, I couldn't agree with you more. Certainly be a very interesting trade deadline. I had a lot to talk about here on Sportswire Radio. So I'm looking forward to Friday's show, and maybe we'll do a recap on the deadline. Let's see how my voice holds up, but looking forward to, for sure, next week's show. So obviously a lot we spoke about here tonight on a very interesting day here. And, of course, recapping it, the Yankees acquired Andrew Benintendi right after the Subway Series, and also the big news all around Major League Baseball here that the Seattle Mariners have acquired Luis Castillo for the Cincinnati Reds for 4 of the premier prospects in all of baseball. And Chris pointed out in terms of who got the better end of the deal. Well, it looks like the Cincinnati Reds, according to what Chris sent us, fleeced the Seattle Mariners. And from some of the guys here and some of the comments that we've had here in our chat tonight, it seems like that is very well the case. And it very well could be to what the Brute Force said last week on Sportswire Radio, kind of the appetizers to the main course, because Tuesday I think it's going to be a flurry of trades left and right, and I don't see the Yankees being quiet. I just don't see them being quiet. I don't see the Mets being quiet, and I'm looking forward to all of it here. So we've got a lot to talk about here tonight, so let's get to closing thoughts here, and I'll go with Chris first. And Chris, great to have you back here, and enjoyed that I saw you with the That Metal Show guys. That was nice to see Don Jameson and Jim Florentine. Always like their stuff. I think, is it Jim that has a show on Sirius XM? That I catch up once in a while with, and great guys. And you share any stories, anything you want to share before I get to closing thoughts? Anything of note that they shared with you?
Just Don Jameson said that Eddie Trunk is going to be making an announcement in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
A new show, because I said, hey, how about it? Are you guys going to come back with the show soon? And he said, listen, Eddie Trunk is making an announcement in a couple of weeks. He goes, I don't know what it is, because he didn't even tell me about it. So.
I should tell you the story very quickly that I wrote to Eddie Trunk a long time ago. Like, I was a kid. He was on WNEW, and he actually wrote back to me. I probably have the email somewhere, but I wrote to him. I forget what I asked him, but he actually wrote me. In fact, he wrote back to me like like an hour later. So I have to say I'll always appreciate Eddie Trunk for that, and always enjoyed that metal show. So hopefully they come back. But great stuff. But I want to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts. Anything you want to plug, share, say. I'm looking forward to playing the Talking Rivals show coming up here this weekend tomorrow, and the floor is yours. And fire away.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the trade deadline. See what the Yankees do, the Mets do, and other teams. Is Soto going to get moved? That's going to be the big one. I don't think the Yankees will be in on it. I don't think the Mets either because they're in the same division, so I don't see them moving him there. But that should be interesting, and we're going to talk about it all on Talking Rivals. Me and Patrick, we'll be covering a lot of it. We've got a big show coming Tuesday. We're probably going to review the Jeter series as well.
Yeah, I was watching some of that last night. I really enjoyed that. Me and Anthony Finkel were watching. We were swapping stories about the '98 World Series was on the first episode. We were kind of swapping our memories of that. So
yeah, it was. I find it interesting that he's opening up because he's a guy that
he never opened up as a player. He never spoke, never talked.
A lot of these stories that he's talking about, you didn't really hear about. So that's why I liked about it.
I thought the A-Rod Jeter thing about the whole thing about them when A-Rod came, and then there was the day in Chicago with the rain out, and they were in the dugout, and Jeter approached them. I thought that was such a fascinating story.
Yeah,
you never would have heard that in 2004. Never.
No, stuff like that never came
Even
out.
the press conference where Jeter talks about, they asked him, "Oh, well, you seemed upset or whatever," and that'd be like the brute force if he was with Doug Niblock and Frank Basile, and they would have asked him, "Oh, well, did you not like him?" And Brad would have said, "Well, of course I like him," but Jeter kind of answered the same way. He was like, "No, the way I came across, that was so fascinating about the whole press conference with A-Rod coming in." So I really enjoyed that, I have to say. More than I expected, I have to say.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I've read a couple of books on Jeter, and none of these stories were in those, so it's kind of interesting.
I always admired Jeter, even though as a Mets fan, I always kind of equated him to me to like Cal Ripken. I always thought him and Cal Ripken were on like that same pedestal. Maybe not stats wise, they were like the greatest, but in terms of what they meant to me so much more than the home runs, the RBIs, and the batting average. So that's great stuff. I'm looking forward to all that. CP7NY, C Pizea also on Twitter as well, and great to have you. Welcome back. And Justin, I turn it over to you, my friend. I want to give you some closing thoughts, anything you want to plug, share, say, and looking forward to another baseball banter show, and the floor is yours, and fire away, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. The next baseball banter will be a trade deadline special, even though I broke it down a little bit in the last episode.
Yep.
This will be like a full focus on the trade deadline and, kind of see, what pieces fit where. Talk about some of the trades that have already happened. Again, break down the Luis Castillo trade, some of the trades that the Mets and Yankees have made, like whether it's Benintendi, Vogelbach, or Naquin. And, see, what teams have the biggest needs. And I think tonight was no bigger example than the fact that the Dodgers need a closer. I mean, 5-2 game, Craig Kimbrell comes in, nearly blows it.
And the Nationals disposed of him in extra late innings the Wednesday game I was watching.
Yep. Craig Kimbrell's been a big problem for them. I think if there's one minor weakness for the Dodgers, I think it's in the bullpen and their closer situation. So, I mean, that's going to be a team of focus as well as some of the other buyers in the market. So, look for that this weekend, and away we go. We're counting down. We've now hit July 30th, so just a few days away. Tuesday is fast approaching. So you can follow me on Twitter at JGNLE12 and at BBallBanterSM.
Looking forward to all that and great stuff there, Justin. I'm looking forward to the shows, and certainly we'll make sure on Sportzwire Radio those shows get played as soon as available. And Billy, welcome back. I hope that the next time we have you on is a lot shorter of a return versus this last week. Because like I said, I forgot the last time when you were on. I couldn't tell you really when it was. I'd have to go back in the archives, and I'm not going to do that right now. But it's great to have you, my friend. Love everything you've done for us. You've been with me for a long time, and I have always appreciated your friendship here for us, just like with the Brute Force and Rob Maraska. So always like to support those that have been with me as long as you have been along with the Brute Force. So I give you the floor. Anything you want to plug, share, say, and I can't thank you enough, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on. I felt good to get back on the stream. Again, took longer than I hoped it would, but life happens.
I hear you.
For those you can catch me on Twitter at WMCINE. And for a final thought, I know I said it earlier. I can't shake this feeling that the Dodgers are going to make an 11th hour move to get Soto. It just feels like a very Dodgers thing to do, especially with the ownership group and the prospects they have.
They did it with Scherzer and Turner.
Yeah, I can't shake the feeling that they're going to make that move and go get him. I hope I'm wrong. But I can't completely shake the feeling that's going to happen. So that's my closing thought for the week is watch for Soto to end up in the Dodgers.
Like I'm going to say before I get to Randy, everybody said, the Yankees, the evil empire all those years. No, if the Dodgers wind up getting Soto, the real evil empire is the Dodgers. The Yankees, listen, the Yankees didn't every deadline get everybody. I mean, there was years they didn't. And they actually, now you're watching the documentary with Jeter, it's actually kind of the contrary. So if the Dodgers do this, to me, listen, the evil empire is back, and it's times 10 and multiplied. So
apparently they're trying to work on Ohtani.
There you go. See,
we're trying to work on what?
Ohtani.
They've been engaging the Angels about Ohtani.
Well, the good news is Mike Trout came out and said something with his back, so you can scratch him off the Dodgers list. So at least Mike Trout's off their list also. So that's the good news on that. Although unfortunate with Mike Trout, hopefully he's not going the route of a David Wright, but we'll certainly see. But Randy, great to have you, my friend. And is that a Budweiser shirt that you have on there?
Yes, it is.
That is a cool shirt, by the way. I don't drink, but I appreciate the creativity there on the shirt. Hopefully this does feel like a night that you might want to have a Bud for you because here in New York, it's humid, muggy, and I'm sure where you are, it's not too good either. So I give you the floor. Anything you want to plug, share, say, and hope that you have a cold one after this, and maybe you douse yourself like Stone Cold used to. So the floor is yours, and hopefully give me a hell yeah and give us a can of whoop ass.
Thanks, Tom. Unfortunately, I have no one to stun here with me, so I can't drink the beer without that. But with regard to the hockey fan chat, we got a guest line up. I've done an episode with in the past. We're going to talk about the Oilers or hope for the upcoming season. Won't be out for a while, just going to be on holidays next week. I won't be on the show.
Yeah, well, yes, England had holiday, by the way, recently as well, so you're going very nice.
Yeah, so definitely we'll have that out there in a few weeks. We have another guest lined up as well. And then just quick hockey note, John Klingberg today, he signed a 1 year with Anaheim. Very surprising, but
$7 million, right?
$7 million. He's doing what Taylor Hall did in the 2020 offseason, signed a 1 year deal with Buffalo, but I see Anaheim with a little bit more hope to make a run, but we'll see what happened there. Quick thought on SummerSlam. It's going to be a good pay-per-view. The card might be as strong, but it's definitely going to be a good show for those wrestling fans. But yeah, you can follow me at Randy Dillon on Twitter, and then you can follow us on the Hockey Fan Chat Facebook page, and we'll have. It's been a little slow here. Month of August usually is end of July.
The month of August is like baseball in January.
When September comes around, the news will pick up. Training camp, all the fun things will start again here soon.
Hey, Randy, before you go, give us some Islander news, please. Me and Tom.
Chris, I wish I had Islanders news. It has gone dead quiet for the island. I think everyone on the island is just waiting for Lou to do something. It's just surprising that he hasn't done anything. He's going to go with the same roster. And I think the big thing going in next year, and as I'm an Islander fan, I'm very concerned, especially what Matthew Tkachuk just did with Calgary. Is he going to say, trade me or just give me sign me to a 1 year arbitration deal? Because I think he's following the same category John Tavares is, where you don't know where this Islander team's going. Like you won a few rounds a few years ago, but now it's like last year. Like, where are we going? We haven't done anything to get better. So I would be concerned if I'm the Islanders.
It's a franchise that is forever been dogged by either it's on the ice, off the ice. It's a franchise that since they had the Stanley Cup run, they've had such hard luck, and you almost feel it with Barzal. It's going the same route it's going with Tavares. I don't know, man. I know the brute force is going to talk about confidence all day long. But the Islanders, I mean, I got nothing with it, man.
No, I think a year ago, this franchise had all the confidence in the world. But
we had you on. We talked about it.
Yeah, I was thinking they were at the top, but now it's like, where are they in the Metro? Because the Metro has gotten better.
Columbus improved. You got a new coach in Philadelphia. You expect Tortorella to improve the team. The Devils have made some steps. You got to figure Rangers are there. Pittsburgh and Washington never fall back. And, by the way, Carolina.
They got Brent Burns in the packs already. So, like, the Islanders are not in an easy division where you can sneak in the playoffs. No, they're in a tough dogfight.
They could have a year where in that building, Brute Force and I were talking about UBS Arena. If you'd been there, that's the kind of place, if the Islanders, God forbid, start like 3-10, 3-10, 2-1, there's going to be a lot of empty seats in that building there. A lot of, because Long Island fans are very fickle.
The fans are wanting Lou's head at that point.
I think they should warn him now because Trotz himself said, I expected to be the coach of the team, and he removed him. So to me, clearly with Lou, I mean, the patience in that fan base, trust me, because I was a season ticket holder in Brooklyn for almost 4 years, and I heard you and Justin talk about the Brooklyn years. That's a fan base. If they get off to a slow start, you talking about brute force in the Knicks, the Islander fan base is going to have no patience. There's going to be a lot of empty seats in that building. Very quickly. Even I heard Ledecky say, "Oh, I got full confidence in Lou." Blah 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 blah. No, let me tell you something. If this team gets off to a slow start, they're going to be in a very awkward situation. Because, like you said, they got a lot of
confidence in sports mean nothing. We saw it with Ken Hall last year in Edmonton when they were on the tailspin. He said, "I got full confidence in Dave Tippett." Next thing you know,
that's the worst thing in sports to say when it comes to a coach or a player, because you know it means the opposite.
Unless Brad can say, unless it's James Dolan of the Knicks, because he got confident in everyone, he's okay going down straight. I'm sorry, Brad, taking that shot.
But I gotta say, listen, I'm gonna get to the brute force. The Rangers, James Dolan's done okay.
The Rangers, he's done great. For the Knicks, though, like that's where I think
he's done okay. I know Billy's a Rangers fan, but the Rangers, they've had intermittent success. I know they haven't won the Stanley Cup, but they've had good teams. I mean, it's not
100%. The Rangers have had great teams, and that's where it's like you wonder. That's what happened in meddling ownership. I see it out here in Vancouver. When you get meddling ownership, it just takes you downhill.
But I'll tell you with the Islanders, I'm definitely, if this team, looking at this core, Josh Bailey's still there. You got Brock Nelson, okay, but Anders Lee's old, aged fast. Kyle Palmieri, JG Pajot. I mean, it's you got Varlamov, okay, for another year on a walk year. I mean, I don't know.
And you resigned Parise and Clutterbuck, where you should have traded them at the deadline to get assets.
Clutterbuck, a guy who, by the way, I met Clutterbuck, and he was probably I should probably say it, he was the least favorite athlete I've ever met. He was like, when we had the season ticket years, you go and meet the team, he was like, I don't even want to say it on the air because I'll get booted off the air. I've been praying they would trade him for like 5 years. That's here nor there, but great stuff there, Randy. Obviously, everybody give Randy Dillon a follow on Twitter and Instagram, also Hockey Fan Chat. And we certainly didn't save the best for last, but we saved the biggest for last, as I always say, and that is the man that exudes confidence. He is none other than the brute force, Bradley Weiss. And I've seen you now 2 times in the span of a month, where I think I only saw you 2 times in the span of 2 years prior to that. So certainly we're on a little bit of a streak here. We hope to keep that going. But until then, I turn it over to you, and the floor is yours, and you know the drill.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys, for another great week of the Sports Report. Thank you, Chris, Justin, Billy, Randy. Another great week. Rob Moroska as well. Hope he feels better. He was on the show, so give him a shout-out for another great week of the show. Of course, you can follow me on social media at BWeiss20 on Instagram, at BradWeiss20 on Twitter, and searching Bradley Weiss on Facebook. Another place I want everybody to follow, though, is the Long Island Knicks, because I worked for them this past week. Like I said, I was over in Baldwin Park. We also worked a clinic today in Mineola. We had a great week, and I was also interviewed for the Long Island Nets, which will be on their social media page in the coming days, an interview with me. So
tag me on it so I can watch it. Tag me on it.
If you want to see that interview, you better follow the Long Island Nets at Long Island Nets on Instagram and all social media pages. There'll be an interview with me in the coming days, so make sure you're tuning in for that. Also follow us with Level Up as well, at levelup_LI. We just announced today the tryout dates for our September fall-winter season, so be sure to check that out as well. Now, I want to make my final comments before the trade deadline on my New York Mets, while confidence is right behind me. Because I will say that first of all, Tom Bryce, just to tell you, I'm trying my hardest, and some of you might even see me because some of you might be at Citi Field next weekend, but I'm going to try my very hardest to be at a Mets-Braves game next weekend, because I am confident, Tom Bryce, confident that we are going to win that series against the Braves, and I think that my presence is going to help that. So ultimately, I'm going to try to get there, number one. Number two, I just read a tweet from Ken Rosenthal earlier in the day. that basically said if the Cubs ask too much for Contreras, if they ask too much for Robertson, the fallback option could go back to the Red Sox and potentially be right for JD Martinez and a guy we didn't talk about, Christian Vasquez, the catcher, who's batting 280 this year.
Good one.
It
Good
could be
one.
a nice, solid backup if the Cubs do not accept our offer or ask for too much. So keep that in mind because there was a Mets scout at the Red Sox game tonight. So there's a chance that that could possibly go down. Keep that in mind. But the last thing I want to say is about the bullpen. The bullpen, an interesting story is that we have three starters who are now going to be in the bullpen. McGill, Peterson, and Williams, who's been in the bullpen already. So that could potentially give us a little more peace, a little more confidence in the bullpen. But it's obviously going to be important that we get a bullpen piece. And I will say this to make Ernest Tubb smile. All right, Ernest Tubb, when he hears this. All right, there is one guy who could either be the Colin Holderman, potentially coming out the team, or he could be a piece that could go in one of these trades. And he's pitched really well, both in the minors and in the majors in his short time. And that's the guy with the mustache who's been on this show, Steven Nagosic.
Yep.
Keep your eyes
I've interviewed him twice.
on Steven Nagosic, either as a trade piece to help us get one of these players, or a potential guy who could help us this season be in that bullpen and potentially be one of those shockers like Colin Holderman, who maybe might lift us to the confidence that we're going to have when we beat these Atlanta Braves next weekend, Tom Bryce. So I can't wait. I can't wait to see you next week on Friday when I give you this lecture once again. Confidence when we're playing the
I'm going to be hearing this the whole season.
Here's a little nugget. Today they recalled Steven Nagosic, so he is on the big league roster.
To his point, that's usually the means that they're looking to move here. That usually means I know what that means. I've spoken to people. I know what that means, that he could be moved. And you know what? I'd be happy for him. He's a guy that's we know his story on Sportswire Radio, and he's went through a lot to keep his career. In fact, he was a non-roster player at one time. After he made the big leagues, he got sent down a couple times. He got sent down last year, this year, and he's a guy that's really battled. I mean, he's a guy, if you ever want to see anybody to make it. Yep.
His ERA is under 1 in the minors and the majors this year. I know he hasn't been strong in the majors, but he's been good.
And when he was in the big leagues, they've always put him in spots that he had no chance. I mean, last year, this year, in 2019, we talked about it when we had him on here on Sportswire. I mean, he's a guy that if you're ever going to root for somebody, he would be the guy to root for, because you look at his story, you look at everything he's went through. His family have supported us, his father, and I mean, is always liking our stuff occasionally on Twitter. I mean, this is the kind of guy. There's some guys that Ernest gets close to, and they are what they are. But this was a guy that we had a chance to speak with, and he was one of my favorites. So if there's anybody that does get a move and gets to go somewhere and prove themselves a little bit more and make a few dollars because he's got a young family, Steven Nagosic would be the guy. So I certainly hope that for Mr. Nagosic's sake, whatever happens, that it all works out. But great stuff to brute for us. We'll see if we continue that confidence. We'll keep that good foot on. We'll see. It was good seeing you, obviously, last week. We look forward to more of that here. And I want to thank everybody that's tuned in here tonight on Sportswire Radio, because we spoke about a lot here. We'll be back also Sunday night. We'll be back here with pro gamer Ty Deuce. So Ty Deuce, R&B singer, also does some gaming. I want to thank our friends over at Pro Zone Gaming Division once again for that opportunity. PZGD is the hashtag. I want to thank Mr. Big Snoop for that. Also be back Wednesday with the band Panzer, so local band from Brooklyn. Looking forward to speaking with them. Then also we'll have more pro wrestling talk on Tuesday, and maybe some more talk intermittent between that. I'm sure we'll have all that. We have some world champions coming back like Jack Bartley, the new CCW world champion, much, much more. So if you are on sportnarium.com/player, you will actually get the show that Randy Dillon and Justin Gianelli did. You're actually going to get that show in about 10 minutes. So I didn't put in some of the new shows because I was in an online jury all day. So I just had that still, and that's why I kept it in the reserve, and hopefully somebody listens to that. But I do want to thank everybody here, and I want to thank Chris Bizet of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter Show, the returning Billy McInerney, formerly of Elite Sports, and Randy Dillon of the Hockey Fan Chat, and the brute force Bradley Weiss, the legendary SJC New York Golden Eagle, Level Up, Long Island Nets, LA Brew Crew. Not even going to talk about the Brew Crew because it's not really your guys' year. And of course, he's the head coach of our Plainview JFK boys JV basketball team. And I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. And I want to thank again John Gonzalez of the Sports Authorities Group. I want to thank Anthony Finkel and DPH Property Maintenance. We'll be seeing Anthony Finkel tomorrow night as we watch the debut of pro wrestler Chris Urban, who was on here for Sportswire Radio. We will see him at the House of Glory in Jamaica, Queens tomorrow night. Looking forward to that. Also, Jamie Sanders, who paid for my meal at Duffy's last week. So thank you, Jamie Sanders, for that. And thank you to everybody that's tuned in and watched. Also, Wrestling Championship Entertainment. Want to thank them, our friends over at GT Ministries, CCW, Nonstop Action Wrestling, and the LWF. So if you're on Sportswire Radio, tune in. Hang on tight. We'll get to your regularly scheduled programming in a few minutes. If you're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, or elsewhere, I thank you for tuning. I also want to thank Desmond Johnson for Tobacco Sports Road Radio. We may get on there. He really hasn't played our shows over the past few weeks, so if he's on and he plays us, thank you. If not, no problem anyway. But thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. Have a great weekend out there. Let's go Mets. Let's go Yankees. Let's go NFL. Let's go NHL. Let's go WWE, Ric Flair, everybody else. And have a great weekend. We'll be back with you Sunday night on Sportswire Radio, the #1 global radio station.